Chapter 291. The gray-robed elder was a little surprised, and his expression changed. He was actually sent flying by a sea of consciousness cultivator. Young man, how did you cultivate your physique? Did you control some kind of shocking secret technique? The gray-robed elder said coldly. Lin Tian's heart froze, but his expression did not change. What does it have to do with you, old fart? The gray-robed elder's face turned cold, and he directly pressed forward. The gray-robed elder looked very old, but when he moved, he was astonishingly powerful. Like a thunderbolt, he attacked quickly and fiercely, much more powerful than the palm at the beginning. Lin Tian swung his fist and directly met the attack. The two collided, and immediately a loud bang was heard. Lin Tian felt a slight numbness in his right hand. He took a step back and punched again. Now his physique could be said to be extremely powerful. With all his strength, his fists were covered with a faint layer of true essence light, and they constantly collided with the gray-robed elder. Bang! 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 Fist and palm continuously collided, and the air buzzed. The gray-robed elder narrowed his eyes. Interesting indeed. You can barely compete with me in terms of physique. As he spoke, the gray-robed elder's hand gesture changed, and in an instant, a powerful true essence flowed out. I will definitely ask what I want to know. If you don't speak, I will force you to speak. Buzz! Specks of light appeared on the gray-robed elder's hand, and when he clapped, it caused the space to distort. A sword appeared in Lin Tian's hand, and he directly slashed with the yang incinerating fifth sword. Old fart, don't even think about getting anything from me. The yang incinerating fifth sword slashed down, and in an instant, flames filled the sky. At the same time, a light flashed between his eyebrows, and a white lotus sword rushed out and slashed directly at the gray-robed elder. The gray-robed elder was slightly moved. Is this the thing that the owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop said can directly attack the Sea of Consciousness? The old farts of the 100 Refinements Workshop told you quite a lot of things. Lin Tian Ondao. The white lotus sword buzzed and directly slashed down. The gray-robed elder snorted coldly, dodging the white lotus sword and reaching for Lin Tian's head. Lin Tian rushed out, barely dodging the sharp claws that came from the sky. Not bad. The gray-robed old man's eyes were ice cold. As he spoke, the gray-robed old man stretched out his hand. His 5 fingers were like sharp blades, emitting a rich true yuan light. In an instant, the image of a majestic giant eagle appeared. Its eyes were sharp, and its claws were sharp. It tore at Lin Tian's throat. Lin Tian felt a chill run down his spine. His sword vibrated as he unleashed the 5th sword of the incinerating sun boom. Blinding flames interweaved and filled the sky, forming a sea of fire that pressed down on the gray-robed old man. Unfortunately, the gray-robed old man was very powerful. He tore through everything with a single claw. Lin Tian secretly thought that the gray-robed old man was very strong. He was much stronger than the centipede demon at his peak. His cultivation was at the 3rd heaven of the Imperial Sky Realm, comparable to the masters of the 4 major sections. Facing the attack of the gray-robed old man, he met the attack with all his strength. He activated the 9 forms of the incinerating sun to the limit of his current control. At the same time, the white lotus sword slashed at the gray-robed old man. However, the gray-robed old man's speed was too fast. The white lotus sword could hardly graze him or even get close to him. I can't go on like this. Lin Tian tightened his grip on the long sword and withdrew the white lotus sword. Using the white lotus sword like this would not only not injure the gray-robed old man, but would also constantly consume his divine sense. The gray-robed old man pressed forward, indifferently saying, "Young man, there is no need to struggle. Struggling is useless. It will only cause you more pain and helplessness. Tell me honestly what happened here, and then tell me the body refining techniques and movement techniques you cultivate. I promise not to harm a single hair on your body. I will hand you over to the 100 Refinements Workshop unscathed." Lin Tian laughed with ridicule and said, "Old fellow, have you lost your mind? Can I live if you hand me over to the 100 Refinements workshop? I'm going to die anyway. So what's the use of not harming a single hair on my body? Tell me. As he said this, his hands did not slow down. His sword trembled and swept out a flaming sword beam that filled the sky towards the gray-robed old man. The gray-robed old man's face darkened. You don't have to suffer physical pain. I'm going to die anyway. So what if I suffer physical pain? Lin Tian shook his head and said, Old man, you're putting the cart before the horse. This condition is not tempting at all. You can say that if I tell you what happened here and teach you the body refining techniques and movement techniques, you will help me destroy the 100 Refinements workshop and kill everyone in it. Only then will I be tempted. As he spoke, Lin Tian revealed a hint of mockery and said, However, do you have the ability to do so? The gray-robed old man's eyes turned cold. You have a sharp tongue. Buzz. The gray-robed old man waved his right hand. Immediately, silver runes flashed and descended from the sky, enveloping Lin Tian. Lin Tian's body trembled. This was soul power. The next moment, he revealed a shocked expression again. After the silver runes descended, they actually turned into an iron chain of light that covered the surroundings, completely imprisoning his body, making it difficult for him to move. You're an array controller? His expression changed slightly. Engraving runes in the void, this was at least a rank 6 array controller. You have some eyesight. The gray-robed old man coldly snorted and said, This seat has specialized in array control techniques for more than 200 years. 3 years ago, I reached the rank 6 level. Although this confinement pattern is not too precious among the rank 6 array patterns, it is your honor to be seen by a mere sea of consciousness realm cultivator like you. As he spoke, the old man walked towards Lin Tian, clearly treating Lin Tian as a piece of meat. Do you really think I'm a lamb waiting to be slaughtered? Seeing the gray-robed old man casually walking towards him, Lin Tian snorted. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body lit up with a resplendent silver light. The Divine One's soul art began to circulate madly. Vigorous soul power gushed out endlessly. In an instant, it turned into a number of sharp soul blades that slashed around his body. The runes that had been imprisoned outside his body were cut into pieces. The gray-robed old man's expression changed. You can actually break free from rank 6 array runes. Looking at Lin Tian again, the gray-robed old man was shocked again. You're also an array controller. And you're at rank 4. The gray-robed old man was extremely shocked that Lin Tian could break free from his rank 6 confinement runes. And when he discovered that Lin Tian had rank 4 array controller ability, the gray-robed old man was even more shocked. You look only 17 years old. How can you have such a strong array controller ability? Reaching rank 4 array controller level at 17 years old and being able to break free from rank 6 array runes, this made the gray-robed old man's heart palpitate. Throughout history, such a thing had never happened before, because I have a great master who has reached the peak, Lin Tian purposely said. The gray-robed old man trembled fiercely. You mean, your master is a legendary peak array controller? Pinnacle array manipulation master, that is, an array manipulation master who has reached the 9th stage. This level of array manipulation master is terrifyingly powerful, almost to the point of being demonic. With a raise of their hand, they can destroy a huge sect. Lin Tian lung snorted, not commenting. If he could use a powerful array controller master to intimidate the gray-robed old man, he would naturally be happy to do so. The gray-robed old man seemed to be certain that Lin Tian had a peak array controller master. Staring at Lin Tian, his eyes flickered again and again, full of fear. He muttered to himself, No wonder you have such a shocking array controller level at such a young age. You actually have a peak array controller master as your master. That is a figure that only exists in legends. The gray-robed old man's eyes kept changing, and gradually, there was a hint of madness in them. It is said that a peak array controller master can control many rare and legendary array runes from ancient times, and even forbidden array runes. I think your master must have passed them down to you. As he spoke, the gray-robed old man approached Lin Tian step by step, I am so lucky. After capturing you, those array runes will belong to me. After a few days, my array controller skills can reach a higher level. Boom! A thunderous aura surged up, causing the ground to shake. At this moment, the gray-robed old man fully displayed his strength, becoming more terrifying than a ferocious beast. Lin Tian's expression changed, and he cursed under his breath. Originally, he wanted to fabricate a peak array controller master to intimidate and threaten the gray-robed old man, but he did not expect the gray-robed old man to turn around and capture him to copy array runes. Staring at the gray-robed old man, he shouted, "Old thing, aren't you afraid that my master will kill you when he finds out? You are courting death." The gray-robed old man stopped in his tracks, obviously still having an instinctive fear. After all, a pinnacle array manipulator was the source of destruction. The gray-robed old man clenched his fists, and the expression in his eyes kept changing. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and he suddenly trembled. Wait, pinnacle array manipulators were all at the top of the heaven domains. How could you possibly meet a pinnacle array manipulator in this world? At the same time, there is a problem with the space-time door in this heavens. It seems that only cultivators of the immortal ascension realm and above can cross the space-time door to enter the upper heavens. In other words, it is impossible for you to have entered the upper heavens. If that is the case, how could you have a peak array controller master? Lin Tianwei was shocked, and he cursed in his heart. Why is this old man's thinking so meticulous? Staring at Lin Tian, the gray-robed old man's eyes became extremely excited. Could it be that you have obtained the inheritance of a peak array controller master from ancient times in this heavens? Seeing Lin Tianwei's expression change, the gray-robed old man was even more certain of his guess. It should be so. It must be so. Staring at Lin Tian again, the gray-robed old man laughed crazily. The heavens have treated me well. As he spoke, an even more terrifying aura flowed out of the gray-robed old man's body, causing Lin Tian's expression to change again. This power had already reached the peak of the third heavenly layer of the Zephyr realm. Cursing in his heart, Lin Tian stepped on the yin-yang qi and turned to leave. This gray-robed old man was too strong. Coupled with the fact that he was a 6-tier array controller, it was not something he could fight against now. Whoosh! His speed was very fast. Under the full power of the yin-yang qi, he directly turned into a ray of light and fled into the distance. You can't leave! The gray-robed old man stretched his body and directly chased after him. Lin Tianyi shouted as he fled, "Old man, I have a master in the Burning Sun sect who is at least at the peak of the airborne realm. If he knows that you have attacked me, he will definitely kill you." This gray-robed old man was indeed a bit terrifying, several times stronger than the owner of the 100 Refinements workshop. After his master was seen through, he could only threaten him with an old drunkard. This old man is the president of the Array Controller Guild of dozens of countries. Why would I be afraid of your master? The gray-robed old man snorted coldly and said, "Before this old man came here to capture you, I already knew of your master's existence, so don't think about threatening me with this. Obediently surrender and hand over all your array controlling techniques, and this old man will let you go." Chapter 292. Lin Tian brought up an old drunkard to try to threaten the gray-robed old man. Secondly, he wanted to know how powerful the gray-robed old man was. Now that he heard the other party's words, he felt even more uneasy. This gray-robed old man's identity was so extraordinary. He was actually the president of the Association of Array Manipulators of dozens of countries. Damn, the 100 Refinements workshop. Lin Tian gritted his teeth. He really didn't expect that the 100 Refinements workshop would actually invite such a person to deal with him. He thought about it. It should be that the other experts of the 100 Refinements workshop were being monitored and restrained by the Burning Sun sect, so they wanted to invite an external force. At this time, he did not hesitate and quickly fled into the distance. A cultivator at the peak of the third firmament of the Zephyr realm and a 6th-level array manipulator. This combination of strength was comparable to a cultivator at the 5th firmament of the Zephyr realm. Whoosh! The sound of air breaking rang out. The yin-yang puppet could be said to be a supreme movement technique. In an instant, it allowed him to flash dozens of feet away. Such speed shocked even the gray-robed old man who was in the Zephyr realm. Then, the gray-robed old man's eyes flashed with an even more shocking light. Hand over your physique tempering technique, movement technique, and formation control patterns, and I will let you go. I will not hand you over to the 100 Refinements workshop, and I will not make things difficult for you again. How about it? I'm afraid that after I hand these things over to you, you will directly kill me. Lin Tian Lung smiled. He was not stupid. How could he believe the gray-robed old man's words? The gray-robed old man's face turned cold. You don't know what's good for you. The gray-robed old man's figure looked a little stooped, and his face was full of wrinkles. But at this moment, he was so powerful that it made one's heart palpitate. He leaped into the sky and waved his palm. A huge palm print instantly fell down. Boom! Lin Tian felt a chill on his back and quickly dodged to the side. The palm print instantly fell to the ground, making a loud sound. Large cracks spread out in all directions, and the ground was completely split open. Zephyr Realm cultivators are really freaks. Lin Tian cursed secretly. Without any hesitation, he used the yin and yang liang to the limit. He transformed into a stream of light and quickly fled into the distance. He remembered that Elder Tu Bei should be guarding the gap in the Demon Burial Valley. As long as he could reach there, he would be fine. I advise you not to run towards the entrance. After the 100 Refinements workshop received a voice transmission from their disciples and learned of some news, they have already asked people to block the path leading to the entrance. If you rush there, you will definitely die. The gray-robed old man snorted. Lin Tian's heart froze, and he suddenly recalled the scene of Guo Xiaoming using the sound transmission talisman. Come to think of it, the transmission that the gray-robed old man had received from his disciple must have been from that time. Damn it! Thinking of this, Lin Tian couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. However, even though he was annoyed, his footsteps did not slow down at all. Instead, he quickened his pace. Stop! You can't escape from this old man's palm. The gray-robed old man said. Lin Tian clenched his fist and said coldly, Is that so? I'll show you how to escape today. Impudent Junior. The gray-robed old man's face darkened. As he said that, he slapped out another palm at Lin Tian. Boom! The palm print hit the void, causing the space to distort. A violent airflow was generated, almost flipping Lin Tian over. Lin Tian quickly flashed and quickly thought in his heart. It seemed that he couldn't go to the entrance. Clang! The sound of the sword was ear-piercing, and a sword light swept past. Lin Tian was so shocked that all the hair on his body stood on end. Lin Tian stepped on the yin and yang row and flashed. Although his speed was extremely fast, he was still grazed by the sword wind. Immediately, he was shaken to the point that blood flowed out of his mouth. He tilted his head to look at the gray-robed old man and saw that a gorgeous supreme sword had appeared in the old man's hand. Old man, this chapter does not end. Please turn the page. Lin Tian cursed in his heart. He was already an airborne realm expert. Coupled with a supreme treasure that could increase his combat strength by about 70%, it was simply asking for his life. Silver light flashed, and patterns appeared in the void, shining brightly. Space-breaking pattern, the gray-robed old man said coldly. Lin Tian felt a chill run down his spine. He felt that the space in front of him was temporarily isolated, and it was difficult to break through. This made him secretly shocked. A 6th-grade array manipulator was able to carve all kinds of mysterious patterns in the void. It had a strange power, and it was indeed terrifying. He gritted his teeth and madly channeled the Divine One Soul Art. Thick spiritual power gushed out, and he threw a punch forward. Ka! With a crisp sound, the space-breaking pattern was directly shattered by him. After that, he didn't hesitate and quickly fled. The gray-robed old man was even more shocked. Legend has it that there was a supreme soul art in the array manipulation technique of ancient times. It contained the way of breaking patterns. Could it be that he has cultivated that kind of soul art? Thinking of this, the gray-robed old man's eyes suddenly became brighter. Rays of greed flashed quickly, and he couldn't hide it at all. Good, good, good. The heavens are treating me well. As he spoke, the gray-robed old man became even faster. Clang! Another sword light slashed straight at Lin Tian. Lin Tian's speed was fast, but when facing an airborne realm expert, it was difficult for him to block. Bang! He dodged the sword light, but he was brushed by the sword aura and was immediately sent flying 10 feet away. Blood flowed from the corner of Lin Tian's mouth. He felt as if his internal organs had shifted positions. At this time, the gray-robed old man had already stepped over again. Young man, hand over all your array manipulation techniques, and this old man will let you live, the gray-robed old man said in a deep voice. Hand over your mother. Lin Tian cursed and turned to leave. The gray-robed old man's expression became colder. He raised his hand and swung his sword. The terrifying sword light was horrifying. Lin Tian felt a chill down his spine and didn't dare to look back. Whoosh! He was extremely fast, and he was dozens of feet away in one leap. However, compared to him, the gray-robed old man's speed was faster. Bang! Once again, Lin Tian was swept away, and he felt as if several of his ribs were broken. However, he didn't dare to stay in the slightest. He endured the pain and fled again. In the next 15 minutes, he was chased by the gray-robed old man all the way. He was injured again and again, and blood kept flowing from his mouth. During the process, he tried several times to activate the mysterious iron sword in his sea of consciousness, but it didn't work at all. The mysterious iron sword was at the bottom of his sea of consciousness, and it didn't move at all. Damn it! Lin Tian cursed in his heart and sped up. Young man, give up. You can't escape. Why force yourself to suffer? Tell this old man everything, and I'll give you a quick death. The gray-robed old man said. Lin Tian's face was slightly pale, and he quickly fled into the distance. Old man, don't push me. He gritted his teeth and said. This gray-robed old man was too terrifying. He was at the peak of the 3rd level of the Sea of Consciousness, a 6th level array manipulator, and a treasure sword. The combination of these 3 powers made him a monster. This old man is giving you a chance, the gray-robed old man said. The gray-robed old man stretched out his big hand. His 5 fingers were like heavenly hooks, and the air was buzzing. He grabbed at Lin Tian's throat. Lin Tian dodged sideways. Although he avoided the attack, he felt intense pain all over his body. Old man, you forced me to do this, he said coldly. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he directly changed direction and rushed to another place. You're on your deathbed. Where can you escape to? The gray-robed old man said coldly. With a clang, another sword light swept past. It brushed past Lin Tian's head and cut off a large chunk of Lin Tian's black hair. Lin Tianji felt a chill down his spine. He forced the yin-yang qi to speed up a little. You can still speed up? You really have an amazing body technique. The gray-robed old man's eyes were shining. At that moment, the gray-robed old man became more excited. Today he might get a huge treasure. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sound of air breaking was heard. 2 figures quickly rushed to the distance. Lin Tian's mouth was bleeding. His clothes were torn by the gray-robed old man's sword qi. From time to time, he took out Baodan from the stone ring to heal his injured body. He got this Baodan from the big tomb in Sunset Mountain, and it had amazing effects. Soon, the sky darkened. Then, it became bright again. Lin Tian fled frantically. In the blink of an eye, a day and a night had passed. During this period of time, he had been fleeing without rest, causing the gray-robed old man to be shocked again and again. A cultivator at the 6th celestial layer of the Sea of Consciousness was actually able to hold on for so long in the hands of him, a 3rd celestial layer of the Zephyr layer and a 6th tier array master. This could be considered heaven-defying. On this day, the air in front of them became more turbid, and the ground was more humid. Junior, you're almost at your limit, the gray-robed old man said coldly. Lin Tian gritted his teeth. Indeed, after a day and night of flying, although he kept recovering with the Baodan, his true essence was on the verge of exhaustion. However, at this time he clenched his fist. Not far away, a canyon appeared in his field of vision. He saw the 3-inch stone tablet outside the canyon at a glance. Staring at the 3-inch stone tablet and recalling the scenes he saw that day, he instinctively felt a sense of fear. However, when he glanced at the gray-robed old man chasing behind him, his eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. Whoosh! He gritted his teeth and sped up again. Almost in an instant, he came to the edge of the canyon, 3 feet away from the stone tablet. At this time, he stopped. Why, not running anymore? Or has your true essence been exhausted and you can't run anymore? The gray-robed old man said. Staring at Lin Tian, the gray-robed old man's face was indifferent and calm. Old man, I'll say it again, don't force me, Lin Tian said coldly. The gray-robed old man smiled indifferently. You're about to die, and you're still saying this. Force you? So what if I force you? I'll give you one last chance. Hand over all the formation pattern treasured arts, and save me the trouble of torturing you. That will make you wish you were dead. As long as you tell me the truth, I can guarantee you a quick and painless death. Having said that, the gray-robed old man walked towards Lin Tian. Old man! Lin Tian gritted his teeth. A cold light flashed across his eyes. He channeled the last bit of energy in his body and slashed at the 3-inch tall stone tablet. The sword radiance was extremely fast. In an instant, it hit the stone tablet and broke it. What are you doing? The gray-robed old man was puzzled. However, in the next moment, the gray-robed old man trembled and his eyes were filled with fear. Boom! The ground shook and the void distorted. The clouds in the sky dispersed. In an instant, a shocking demonic force rushed out from the broken stone tablet, causing the entire demon burial valley to shake. End of chapter. Chapter 293. The monstrous demonic aura surged into the sky and covered the entire sky. The demon burial valley, which was already dark, was now pitch black. The gray demonic aura was like a leaden cloud that pressed down on the sky. Boom! At that moment, the entire demon burial valley was shaking and large cracks were spreading out. Lin Tian's heart palpitated and a chill ran down his spine. Is this the opening of hell? Damn it! What have you done? The old man in gray robes was furious. The strength of the gray-robed old man was very strong, but now, when facing such an aura, he could only tremble in fear. Not only that, this violent demonic might seem to have sealed the space around him. He couldn't move at all. At that moment, the entire demon burial valley was in an uproar again. It's trembling again. What on earth happened? This time, it's in the deepest part of the demon burial valley. Demonic aura? What a terrifying demonic aura. Color. The sky has changed color. Is a peerless demon born? Everyone in the demon burial valley was terrified. Everyone trembled when they sensed the monstrous demonic aura coming from the deepest part of the demon burial valley. At the same time, Jiyu's expression changed drastically in another part of the demon burial valley. It's that place. Jiyu stared at the deepest part of the demon burial valley in shock. She had been there with Lin Tian not long ago and felt the terror of that place. Now, the monstrous demonic aura was coming from that place. Jiyu's face turned paler. Lin Tian, where have you been? A day ago, she couldn't help but go to the stone forest to look for Lin Tian. However, other than the broken ground and the corpses of demonic beasts, Lin Tian was nowhere to be found. In the deepest part of the demon burial valley, Lin Tian and the old man in gray robes were at the center of the terrifying demonic aura. They couldn't stop trembling. Damn it! The old man in gray robes was furious, but his face was extremely pale. Rumble! The ground was shaking and the space was distorting. The gray demonic aura kept rising from the ground. In an instant, the space seemed to be filled with the roars of demonic beasts. Too much time has passed. Suddenly, a cold voice rose from the ground. With a boom, the space actually produced a muffled sound. Not far away, Lin Tianyi trembled. He felt as if a heavy hammer had struck his chest, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the gray-robed elder wasn't any better. He was knocked to the ground by the sound and was in a sorry state. Both of them trembled as they stared ahead in shock. Over there, at the place where the stone tablet had shattered, a gray demonic chi rushed out, and 4 figures appeared. All of them had cold expressions, especially those 4 pairs of eyes. They were as deep as the starry sky, as if they wanted to devour everything. Lin Tianyi trembled and couldn't help but back away. Staring ahead, the illusions from not long ago appeared once again. He stared at the 4 figures, and behind them, there seemed to be numerous fearsome, demonic beasts. He also saw the ground stained with blood, and the ground was littered with broken corpses. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva. For the first time, he felt a sense of trepidation. You are. The gray-robed elder was terrified. The 4 figures stood in the void and looked down with their deep eyes. Humans. One of the figures raised his right hand, and spots of demonic light gathered. A terrifying fluctuation immediately spread out. The gray-robed elder's face changed. What are you doing? I am the president of the Array Manipulator Guild of the dozens of big countries. You don't mess around? In the void, the person who raised his hand looked at the gray-robed elder. There was no emotion in his deep eyes, and they were cold and numb. Poof! A demonic light fell and drowned the gray-robed elder. Not far away, Lin Tianyi saw a mist of blood disperse. Then, the gray-robed elder's figure disappeared completely. This made his heart tremble. The 4 figures were like the reincarnation of a demonic king. In the void, the 4 figures were extremely muscular, and their faces were cold. The 4 of them scanned the demon burial valley and the space-time portal in the depths of the valley. After a long while, one of them lowered his head and looked at Lin Tianyi coldly. Lin Tianyi trembled. Just by looking at the 4 of them, he felt like he was going to suffocate to death. Seniors, I was the one who broke the stone tablet and released all of you. He braced himself and said. The 4 figures were obviously suppressed by the stone tablet. He said this in hopes that the 4 of them would forgive him. In the void, the 4 of them were expressionless and they were still cold. It was still the same person from before who raised his hand, and a terrifying demonic light instantly converged. Lin Tianyi trembled and his face changed. Staring at the demonic light, he felt his body turn cold and his heart almost jumped out of his chest. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't move his body. The space around him seemed to have been frozen. There was no chance for him to escape. How dare you bite the hand that feeds you? 4 ungrateful old bastards. He cursed. In the void, the 4 figures still looked cold. Finally, the demonic light fell. Swish! The space was distorted and the demonic light was close to them in an instant. Lin Tianyi's face was pale, and he looked desperate. Not to mention that his genuine core strength had been exhausted. Even if he were at his peak, even if he were 10 times or 100 times stronger, he would not have the slightest confidence to block these 4 people. These 4 figures were conservatively estimated to be existences above the celestial reaching realm. Facing these 4 people, he would definitely die. Damn it. He gritted his teeth, and his heart was full of resentment. Suddenly, the space in front of him was distorted. A faint light screen appeared and bounced the demonic light away. Lin Tianyi was shocked. He stared at the light screen in front of him in shock and confusion. At this moment, a familiar aura came from the sky, causing him to raise his head to look. Instantly, he was overjoyed. Old man, a middle-aged man in white, slowly descended from the sky. He had a wine gourd on his waist, and his shawl was dancing in the wind. It was an old drunkard. An old drunkard came to Lin Tianyi's side and put his right hand on Lin Tianyi's shoulder. Hum! A layer of faint light gushed out of his right hand and entered Lin Tianyi's body. Lin Tianyi trembled slightly as he felt an incomparably mysterious power appear within his body. This was a power that he had never come into contact with before. Although it was only a trace, it was like a spark in the darkness, instantly illuminating the surroundings. His heavily injured body was instantly healed, and his depleted Jin Yuan was reborn, surging and surging. In an instant, he felt that he had become stronger. That made his heart palpitate. Just then, a cold voice came from the sky. "Who's there?" The four figures looked down at an old drunkard. One of them raised his hand and slashed down a demonic light. "Be careful," Lin Tian shouted. An old drunkard had his back to the four of them. He raised his left hand and waved it. With a swoosh, the demonic light shattered. Seeing this, Lin Tian's pupils constricted. His face was full of disbelief. He could clearly feel the terror of the four figures in the sky. They were invincible in this realm. But now, an old drunkard shattered the attack of one of them so easily. An old drunkard patted Lin Tian's shoulder and said with a smile, "Kid, you released something incredible." Lin Tianyi was stunned. He could clearly feel that an old drunkard was different from usual. Old man, he felt that an old drunkard was like a different person. Although he was smiling, it was different from usual. He didn't have the casual and frivolous attitude of before. At this moment, he actually saw sorrow and killing intent in an old drunkard's eyes. "Human," a cold voice sounded. In the sky, the figure whose demonic light was shattered by an old drunkard spoke. His eyes were cold. Next to this person, the other three people stared at an old drunkard. Their eyes flashed with gray mist. "This human is a little strange. I think I've seen him before. I do have this feeling." The three people's eyes were still cold. An old drunkard patted Lin Tian's shoulder and turned to look at the four people. "It's been a long time." Staring at an old drunkard, the four people frowned slightly. "You've forgotten? Many years ago, a human woman died here." An old drunkard said, "Many years ago, a human woman." The four figures seemed to remember something. One of them said, "I remember. More than 100 years ago, a human man and woman passed by here. The woman's body was a little special. With her blood essence and soul, we might be able to break through the seal of the stone tablet. The four of us worked together and consumed the woman's blood essence. Unfortunately, we couldn't obtain her soul." "How do you know this?" Staring at an old drunkard, the four people's eyes were cold. An old drunkard said, "Because the person who accompanied the woman at that time was me." "It was you? Your temperament has changed, but that's right, the aura of the origin is the same. It's indeed the human from that time," the four people said. Behind an old drunkard, Lin Tian's expression suddenly changed. He had heard from the Grand Elder of the Burning Sun sect that an old drunkard's woman, Qin Xian, had unfortunately died during the Four Gates trial. At this moment, listening to the conversation between an old drunkard and the four figures, he was shocked. An old drunkard's beloved woman had died here, at the hands of four demonic figures. Looking at an old drunkard in front of him, he finally understood why he saw sorrow and killing intent in an old drunkard's eyes. "After dragging it out for more than 100 years, I originally wanted to wait a little longer. However, since this disciple has released you, perhaps this is the will of the heavens." An old drunkard looked at the gloomy sky with a faint sadness in his eyes. "It's time for revenge." In the void, the four people stared at an old drunkard with cold expressions. "Revenge?" Among the four people, the one whose demonic light had been shattered by an old drunkard spoke. "Human, don't think that you're very strong just because you blocked a casual attack from this king. The current you is still as weak as an ant." With that, with a boom, an earth-shaking demonic aura rushed out from this person's body, directly shattering the void. Staring at this scene, Lin Tian's expression changed drastically, and he couldn't stop trembling. The solid space couldn't withstand the aura emitted by this person and directly collapsed. What kind of power was this? "Kid," a familiar voice came from the front, and in an instant, Lin Tian calmed down a lot. With his back to Lin Tian, an old drunkard opened his mouth and said, You asked me before why you could feel my spiritual ether fluctuation in the Imperial City, but couldn't feel it at all after coming to the Burning Sun sect. Now watch carefully, and I'll show you. Next, whether it's your doubts or the cultivation after the airborne realm, I'll tell you in detail bit by bit. Boom! In an instant, a terrifying aura rushed out from an old drunkard's body, immediately shaking the space. Lin Tian's heart trembled. This was definitely not an aura that could be possessed by someone in the airborne realm. Moreover, there was no spiritual ether in this kind of power fluctuation at all. The first four realms of cultivation are the refinement realm, the divine pulse realm, the sea of consciousness, and the airborne realm. Among them, the refinement realm refines the flesh and bones, the divine pulse realm builds the divine pulse, the sea of consciousness refines the consciousness, and the airborne realm refines the spiritual ether. An old drunkard's body emitted streaks of blazing light, and said, when the spiritual ether is refined to a certain extent and reaches the peak of the airborne realm, there will be a qualitative change. At that time, the spiritual ether you speak of will no longer exist, and it will be transformed into another kind of power. We call this power divine power. At that time, the divine power in the body will flow, and the cultivator will be able to step into the true threshold of cultivation, the immortal realm. Lin Tianyi was shocked. Divine power? It was the first time he had heard of spiritual ether transforming into divine power. After a pause, he looked at the old drunkard and said, "You're saying that when we were in the Imperial City, you were in the airborne realm, and I could sense the fluctuation of your spiritual ether. Later, when we returned to the Burning Sun sect, you had already reached the celestial reaching realm, and what was flowing in your body was divine power, not spiritual ether, so I couldn't sense it." Staring at the blazing light outside the old drunkard's body, Lin Tian's heart palpitated. This is divine power? You really reached the immortal realm? The connecting immortal realm. That was a level beyond all the people in this heaven region. The immortal realm, ants? One of the four said coldly. Hearing this, Lin Tian suddenly trembled. To be able to say such words, these four people had obviously already left the immortal realm. Left the immortal realm. Don't be distracted, listen quietly. An old drunkard's voice came from the front, startling Lin Tianyi. He immediately clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and calmed down a little. In front of him, an old drunkard nodded and continued, "The cultivation of the immortal realm is divided into 2 points. First, condense divine power and make it purer. Second, absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and use divine power to reshape the body. When the divine power has been condensed to completion, when the body has been reborn 9 times, that is the end of the immortal realm. You can enter the 6th realm, the great virtue realm." As soon as he finished speaking, a mysterious Tao diagram condensed and appeared above an old drunkard's head. In an instant, an old drunkard's aura soared, as if it had reached another level in an instant. Seeing this Tao diagram, the 4 demonic shadows in the void changed color for the first time. Chapter 294. Reading on a mobile phone, the Tao diagram circled above an old drunkard's head, interweaving with endless mysterious patterns. Lin Tianyi stared at it over and over again, but he couldn't see through it at all. Moreover, this scene shocked him. Was this a martial technique? This feeling was just like when the violet elves killed Moe in the dark forest. It was just as shocking. In the void, the expressions of the 4 demon shadows completely changed. This diagram can't be wrong. It's too similar. This diagram. He's now in the Great Path realm. 4 symbols seal. The 4 of them stared at an old drunkard. They no longer had the calmness and indifference from before. They shouted, "Human, who are you? How can you know a sealing technique that only ancient celestial lords can control?" Not far away, Lin Tian's expression immediately changed. Great Path realm? Ancient celestial lords? Staring at an old drunkard in front of him, Lin Tian's face was full of disbelief. An old drunkard was now in the Great Path realm? How was that possible? How long had it been from the Imperial City to the burning sun sect. No matter how amazing an old drunkard's talent was, it was impossible for him to go from the airborne realm to the Great Path realm in such a short time. In between, there was still the immortal ascension realm. Although his back was facing Lin Tian, an old drunkard seemed to know what Lin Tian was thinking. He said, "When I entered the immortal ascension realm, I used the four symbols seal to suppress my body and recultivate it from the refinement realm. The airborne realm you saw in the Imperial City was the third time I recultivated." As he spoke, an old drunkard didn't give Lin Tian a chance to think. He continued, "When you advance to the immortal ascension realm, be careful of the heavenly tribulation. The transformation of spiritual essence and divine power will cause some great paths to descend with killing lightning. In addition, after reaching the immortal ascension realm, you will no longer be in contact with martial techniques. It will be magical powers, just like this four-symbol seal." Lin Tian was stunned. "Wait, you recultivated heavenly tribulation, divine ability." Staring at an old drunkard in front of him, Lin Tian felt that he didn't recognize this man anymore. "Just listen to a little. There is no need to know too much. When the time comes, you will naturally understand," an old drunkard said. An old drunkard's body then shone even brighter than before. Next, let's talk about the Great Tao realm. After reaching this realm, one will focus on comprehending the Tao. This is because there are endless great Taos in the world. At this stage, cultivators will comprehend the Great Tao, and temper them. This stage of cultivation is more abstract and difficult to describe. When the time comes, you will be able to understand it yourself. An old drunkard said, "Buzz." Balls of divine light rushed out of the old drunkard's body, forming the second and third Tao diagrams above his head. As the second and third Tao diagrams appeared, an old drunkard's aura skyrocketed once more. In the distance, the four figures' expressions changed again. "There's more. Damn it, it actually has 3 seals." Enlightenment realm. The four people's expressions darkened completely. At this moment, the divine light on an old drunkard's body had reached its peak, and the 3 Tao diagrams appeared. An old drunkard had completely changed into a different person. It was not his appearance that had changed, but his temperament had changed. At this moment, Lin Tianji felt that the originally frivolous man in front of him seemed to have turned into an indomitable man, like a monument. An old drunkard looked at the sky. "The second level of enlightenment. This is my limit now." Lin Tianji trembled violently, and his eyes were completely filled with shock. The second level of enlightenment? He was tongue-tied, unable to calm down. After the Zephyr realm, there was the connecting immortal, great Tao, enlightenment, nirvana, and chaos. An old drunkard had actually reached the enlightenment realm. Gradually, he could not help but smile bitterly. Was this the peerless talent who had swept away all the geniuses of the 4 major sects? In those years, everyone thought that the man was decadent, but he had silently reached such a height. Enlightenment. Lin Tianji clenched his fists and suddenly felt extremely proud that his master was so strong. Staring at an old drunkard, the 3 Tao diagrams hovered above his head, so mysterious that it was almost dreamy, and made him yearn for it. "Do you want to learn?" an old drunkard said with his back facing him. Lin Tianji nodded. "Yes." An old drunkard smiled, and a divine light flew out, directly entering between Lin Tianji's brows. In an instant, Lin Tianji felt that there were many more things in his mind. All kinds of mysterious runes danced, and all kinds of traces of great Tao intertwined. Divine power, for symbol seal, can seal all things in the world. He could not help but say to himself. With just a glance at his sea of consciousness, he was deeply attracted by this 4-symbol seal, and could not help but tremble. This was a divine power? Compared to martial arts, the difference was like heaven and earth. A cold snort sounded. In the void, one of the 4 demon shadows spoke, staring coldly at an old drunkard. "Human, although I don't know how you obtained this sealing technique, do you think that the supreme, secret technique created by the ancient celestial lords can be successfully cultivated by just anyone? Giving it to ordinary people is just a futile effort. If I can cultivate it, so can my disciple. An old drunkard seemed to be calm. With a crack, the 3 Tao diagrams above an old drunkard's head shattered, turning into starlight that entered an old drunkard's body. Lin Tianji felt that an old drunkard's aura had completely stabilized, and it was as strong as a rainbow. So strong, he could not help but clench his fists. In front, an old drunkard moved, slowly rising into the air, and came to the same height as the 4 demon shadows. Next, it's time to make a move, an old drunkard said, staring at the 4 figures in front of him. An old drunkard, who had always been casual, had a faint look of vicissitudes on his face. A cold snort sounded, and the eyes of the 4 figures became cold again. Human, you are indeed very strong, but with this little strength, do you really think you can defeat us? One of them said. Boom, 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 boom. 4 gigantic beams of demonic light soared into the sky. Violent auras spread out, shattering the void. Lin Tianji suddenly trembled and could not help but take a few steps back. This aura did not seem to be weaker than an old drunkard at all. Back then, each of us had reached the end of the enlightenment state. The 4 demon shadows said coldly. An old drunkard's shoulder-length hair was swept up by the strong wind, but an old drunkard's expression was very calm. You also said that was back then. Staring at the 4 of them, an old drunkard distorted the space around him. Back then, the demon race and a few other inheritances fought in this layer of heaven for a treasure of a certain sect, and all living things were destroyed. Unexpectedly, a man who was comparable to an ancient heavenly venerate living in seclusion in this layer of heaven appeared. The other inheritances retreated out of fear, but the demon race refused to leave because you thought that a demon emperor was still alive, and in the end, you were sealed until today. Back then, that man did not kill you out of kindness, but he sealed you until today. Do you still have the strength of the past? The 4 demon shadows suddenly changed their expressions. You are not from that era. How do you know what happened back then? One of them said coldly. An old drunkard said, what happened back then was recorded in the ancient books of the upper layer of heaven very clearly, and everyone in the world knows about it. Do you think that those who retreated back then would just forget about it? There will always be people who will record it down and let future generations know about it. Also, being able to mock the demon race a little is not a bad thing for the opposing inheritances. Hearing this, the 4 demon shadows were furious. That damn man! If our demon emperor were here in person, how could he be so arrogant? Damn it! The 4 of them roared. The defeat of the ancient era was actually recorded in the ancient books. This was undoubtedly a very shameful thing. In the distance, Lin Tian was shocked. What did he hear? Old man, you went to the upper layer of heaven? Lin Tian stared. I told you before, the upper layer of heaven is not as good as this layer of heaven. The battles there are even more brutal. An old drunkard said. An old drunkard did not directly answer Lin Tian's question, but his meaning was obvious. He had indeed been there. At this time, Lin Tian also remembered that an old drunkard had indeed said such things to him in the Burning Sun sect. At that time, he curled his lips and thought that an old drunkard was just saying it casually. He did not expect that an old drunkard had really been to the upper layer of heaven. He thought about it and was even more convinced. After all, an old drunkard had already reached the enlightenment realm. An old drunkard stared at the 4 of them and said, according to the titles of the demon race in the upper layer of heaven, the airborne realm is a great demon. The immortal ascension realm is a demon king. The virtue realm is a demon venerable. The enlightenment realm is a demon god. The nirvana realm is a demon saint. And the chaos realm is a demon emperor. The 4 of you are all demon gods. Although your status in the entire demon race is not very high, it is not bad either. Staring at the 4 of them, an old drunkard stepped forward step by step. At this moment, rays of divine light intertwined around an old drunkard's body, supporting him as the Ruashian king. Human, don't be insolent. As you said, the 4 of us are indeed not at our peak state, but now we have the combat strength of the 3rd tier of enlightenment realm, and there are 4 of us, Ordinary cultivators of the fourth tier of enlightenment realm can only die if they come here. Now, you want to contend with the four of us by yourself, with a cultivation base of the second tier of enlightenment realm? You dare to appear in front of us with such a cultivation base. You are just courting death. Stupid. The eyes of the four people were cold. In the distance, Lin Tian's expression suddenly changed. After being sealed for so long, these four people could still be so powerful. That's why I said that I originally wanted to delay for a while before killing you all. An old drunkard's face had a faint vicissitude, but his pace did not change at all. It's just that, who asked the lovely disciple to release you all? Even if it wasn't for Qing Xian, I still had to come. After all, I can't let the disciple die in front of the master. This is also the master's duty. Lin Tianyi trembled and couldn't help but clench his fists. However, an old drunkard looked at the four people and said indifferently, "Don't be too self-righteous. Being called geniuses and monsters, what we master and disciple are best at is fighting across realms." After saying that, an old drunkard's figure suddenly disappeared and instantly appeared in front of a demon god, directly throwing out a punch. "You puff!" Among the four demon gods, one of them flew horizontally. Half of his face was shattered, and blood and bones splattered all over the sky. So fast, so strong. Lin Tian was suddenly shocked. He actually shattered a demon god's face with one punch. "Human," a deep and cold voice sounded. In the distance, the person who was sent flying stabilized his figure. The shattered face intertwined with light, and the blood and bones that sputtered out actually floated back in the air. In the blink of an eye, this person returned to his original appearance, as if he did not suffer any injuries at all. Don't be surprised. When the cultivation base reaches the Great Path domain, even if the body is cut into pieces, it can still reconstruct the body in a short time. And higher-level powerhouses can even be reborn from a drop of blood. That punch just now for a demon god level powerhouse of the demon clan is naturally nothing. It just tickles. Chapter 295. Lin Tian was surprised. The demon god was able to reconstruct its body after being cut into pieces and regenerate with just a drop of blood. Just how powerful was that? He could not help but gasp. If he had not seen the demon god, whose face was shattered by an old drunkard, recover with his own eyes, he would have found it hard to believe that a cultivator was able to do something like that. Please search Product Percent Book Yin Yin Net to see the most complete. A novel. After the old drunkard's attack succeeded, he lightly retreated a few steps. "Human," the demon god, who was injured by an old drunkard, spoke. A pair of dragon horns grew on its head as it stared coldly at an old drunkard. "Since ancient times, very few humans have been able to hurt me. You are one of the few." "So what?" an old drunkard said. "I'll kill you," the dragon horn demon god said coldly. With a bang, a wave of energy swept out like an ocean, shaking the surrounding space to the point of trembling and distorting. The sky became dark as far as the eye could see. Gray demonic aura intertwined around the dragon horn demon god's body. It was terrifying. It was as if a demon realm had been evolved, and the entire world was covered in demonic light. Lin Tian was shocked. That was a terrifying power. An airborne realm cultivator would probably be crushed in an instant. An old drunkard's shoulder-length hair was blown up by waves of demonic wind. However, an old drunkard remained expressionless and looked very calm. At the next moment, an old drunkard took the initiative to attack. He moved closer to the dragon horn demon god, leaving afterimages behind with each step. He once again smashed down with his fist, directly shattering a part of the space. Lin Tianji saw large black cracks spreading out in all directions. Silver turbulence surged in them, which made his heart tremble. He felt that the turbulence could easily crush him. It was very terrifying. The space was shattered by a single punch. He swallowed his saliva. One man and one punch had shattered the void. That was a terrifying scene. It was a scene of destruction. "Humph!" The dragon horn demon deity snorted coldly as a terrifying wave of energy surged up to meet an old drunkard's iron fist. For a time, demonic light, wantonly, and divine radiance interweaved. The entire sky was shaken open, and there was a type of primitive fluctuation in tangling, causing large spatial cracks to continuously extend in all directions. The ground also couldn't stop trembling, collapsing inch by inch. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them continued to collide. After an unknown amount of time, they finally stopped temporarily, and both of them retreated. The dragon-horned demon god's abdomen was pierced through, leaving a bloody hole. Blood gushed out, and bits of flesh wriggled. Soon, it returned to normal. On the other side, one of an old drunkard's arms had almost been torn off, leaving only a few blood vessels connecting it together. It was a ghastly sight. However, when a divine radiance flashed past, an old drunkard's injuries were completely healed. Human, you are very strong, extremely powerful. However, in the end, you are only one person. The second demon deity spoke. He had a head of golden hair. You dare to charge in front of the four of us by yourself. This is very courageous and daring, but it is no different from courting death. You are too foolish and ignorant. If you die, I will live. Otherwise, I will die, and you will live. An old drunkard was very calm. This calmness was a form of confidence and also a form of pride. The third demon deity snorted coldly, his eyes cold. He said, "We have lived for more than 10,000 years. When we roamed the primordial age, who knows where you were? You have only lived for a little more than 100 years, and now you dare to speak to us in such a manner." Yes, it has been 10,000 years since the primordial age. How much lifespan do you have left? How much longer can you live? An old drunkard said. Instantly, the four demon deities' expressions changed, and their eyes became cold. All living things had an end. They were demon deities, and in the past, they were at the peak of enlightenment and had a lifespan of 20,000 years. However, since they were sealed in the primordial age, an extremely long time had passed, and their lifespan was indeed not much. An old drunkard's words had undoubtedly hurt them. Staring at the old drunkard, the eyes of the four became extremely gloomy. Human, you are very good. Just as you said, after being sealed for so many years, we do not have much lifespan left. However, you appeared at the right time. The fourth demon deity spoke. He had a pair of silver eyes and said, "Your origin is very bright, and your flesh is filled with astonishing vitality. If we refine you into medicine, we can extend our lifespan." Refine me into medicine? An old drunkard smiled. I'm afraid you won't be able to swallow me. The four demon deities' eyes narrowed, and they became even colder. Boom! The four demon deities released their shocking demonic power, and the entire sky was dyed gray. Dense demonic aura gathered together, and it looked like gray clouds covered the sky. With two swoosh sounds, the dragon-horned demon deity and the silver-eyed demon deity charged towards an old drunkard from two different directions. With a punch and a palm, they immediately sealed the space around them. Buzz! An old drunkard waved his hand, and there was a flash of brilliance, and it drowned the area in front of him. Lin Tian stared at the scene from afar, and his eyes flickered. This battle was too shocking. A simple action from the three of them could shatter the space, and every wave of their hands could cause the sky to collapse. In fact, the ground kept sinking, and he kept retreating. He felt a chill run down his spine. The demon burial valley shook, and there were flashes of lightning in the sky, as if a storm was coming. At this moment, many people were staring at the sky, and their faces were extremely pale. What exactly is happening? The sky seems to have shattered. In the depths of the demon burial valley, the place that the sect leader clearly told us not to go near. What is happening there? There is something like a gray barrier standing horizontally. What is that? I've never seen it before. Many people were terrified. At this moment, in the depths of the demon burial valley, everyone saw a gray barrier that seemed to have cut off the space. Some powerful cultivators extended their divine senses to get closer, wanted to see what the gray barrier was. However, in the next moment, they screamed in agony and fell to the ground, with blood flowing out of their 7 orifices. Such a scene immediately made the cultivators even more terrified. Rumble! The ground shook violently, and huge cracks kept spreading, causing many cultivators to panic. The ferocious beasts in the Demon Burial Valley were trembling in fear. At this moment, even the airborne realm experts outside the Demon Burial Valley were alarmed, and all of them looked inside. Boom! In the depths of the Demon Burial Valley, the demonic light covered everything, and the divine radiance shrouded everything. The 3 figures were fighting in the void, causing the void to collapse and the firmament to be destroyed. Everything that was visible was almost completely destroyed. An old drunkard waved his hands. Although it was only a pair of fists made of flesh and blood, they were powerful and oppressive. They shattered the space, shattered the demonic light, and blasted the silver-eyed evil god's chest. He tore off one of his arms and crushed it in the air. However, at the same time, the dragon-horn evil god also pierced an old drunkard's chest with his right hand and kept twisting. "Human, I'll take your life," said the demon god. The dragon-horn evil god said coldly. Lin Tion's face changed drastically. The dragon-horn evil god's hand pierced an old drunkard's heart. The heart was one of the most important parts of the human body. An old drunkard's heart was pierced, but he remained expressionless and said one word, "Seal." Suddenly, a circle of light spread out from his chest. "Ah, damn it, how dare you!" The dragon-horn evil god screamed. The dragon-horn evil god's face was contorted in pain. The arm that pierced an old drunkard's chest withered at a visible speed. Lin Tion's face froze. In the next moment, the dragon-horn evil god roared and tore off the arm that had pierced an old drunkard's chest. His eyes were burning with anger as he retreated dozens of feet. Lin Tion discovered that not far away, the silver-eyed Fey god, who had his arm torn off, instantly recovered and grew a new arm. But at that moment, the dragon-horn Fey god's severed arm was constantly bleeding. It did not immediately regrow a new arm. It was even difficult to stop the bleeding. He was surprised. What did an old drunkard do to the dragon-horn evil god? The 4-symbol seal, a supreme secret technique created by the ancient celestial lords. It can seal everything. The sole origin of your arm should have been sealed by him. You won't be able to recover without 3 to 5 years. The golden-haired evil god glanced at the dragon-horn evil god and then stared at an old drunkard. To be able to cultivate the ancient celestial lord's technique to such a level, it would have been difficult to find someone like you even in the most brilliant ancient era 10,000 years ago. "We can't stay." Another evil god spoke and strode forward with the golden-haired evil god. The 4 evil gods stared at an old drunkard at the same time. 4 terrifying auras spread out and covered an old drunkard like an ocean. For powerful divine consciousnesses locked onto an old drunkard at the same time. Instantly, the space became even more unbearable. It was like a piece of paper that broke inch by inch. Spatial turbulence constantly flowed out. Lin Tion's body trembled, and he could not stop retreating. Damn it! He clenched his teeth, and a trail of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. 4 demon gods of the Enlightenment realm moved at the same time. Being in this kind of demonic aura, with his cultivation, he could not resist at all. At this moment, 4 waves of demonic aura exploded, like a galaxy pressing down. All the bones in his body were trembling, giving birth to unimaginable intense pain, as if his body would be crushed by these waves in the next moment. An old drunkard's figure appeared in front of him with a swoosh. A ball of divine light fell on him and protected him. Instantly, the terrifying pressure disappeared by more than half. Chapter 296. Reading on a mobile phone, Lin Tianyi was shocked. How could he go to the second layer of heaven now? He was only in the sea of consciousness realm. "I can't go through that portal now," he said. With the support of an old drunkard's divine power, the demonic power of the four demon gods couldn't affect him much. "Don't worry, I'm here," an old drunkard said. Suddenly, a gentle divine light rushed out of an old drunkard's body and quickly entered Lin Tian's body. "This is a strand of my origin, enough to protect you through that portal." "Origin?" Lin Tian Wei was confused. A cold snort sounded. In the void, the golden-haired demon god stared at an old drunkard and said, "You humans are really strange and hard to understand. You don't hesitate to use your origin to send away a weak ant." "What's origin?" Lin Tian asked. He had been cultivating for so long. Although his combat power was very strong and could be said to be invincible in the same realm, he didn't know many things. A disciple of the Enlightenment realm actually doesn't know what origin is. "Ridiculous," the golden-haired demon god said coldly. "Listen carefully, human, whether it's a human cultivator or a demon god, there are only three kinds of important things: the sea of consciousness, the divine soul, and the origin. Among these three, the origin is the most important. It's the root of a living creature. It's like the heart of the mortals in your human world. Guess what will happen if the heart is damaged?" Lin Tianyi was shocked and suddenly changed color. "Old man, you," an old drunkard looked calm. "It's okay. I'll recover after a while." At this time, an old drunkard's chest wound had been completely healed. "Recover? You'll have to have a chance to recover first," the dragonhorn demon god said coldly. An old drunkard sealed one of his arms with the four-symbol seal, making his eyes very cold. Suddenly, the four demon gods stared at an old drunkard together again. The violent demon wind swept in all directions, blowing an old drunkard's black hair. "Kid, let's go." An old drunkard had his back to Lin Tiandao. "What about you?" Lin Tian clenched his fists. An old drunkard's expression remained unchanged. "Kill them all?" Lin Tian didn't sense any killing intent from an old drunkard, but he could feel his determination. This was the first time he had seen an old drunkard in such a state. He didn't have his usual easygoing nature, only silence and indifference. He gritted his teeth and retreated into the depths of the canyon. He knew very well that he wouldn't be of any help to an old drunkard if he stayed. Instead, he would become a burden to an old drunkard. At this moment, he did not even mention his sister and friends. Although he was very worried about them, he only suppressed this worry in his heart. He did not want an old drunkard to be distracted by other things at this time. "Don't worry, after you leave, the sect will take good care of your sister and those two little lovers," an old drunkard said. Lin Tianyi trembled. An old drunkard could still tell what he was thinking at this time. He gritted his teeth and ran directly into the depths of the canyon. "Although he's just an ant, we can't let him go like this," the golden-haired demon god said. With a buzz, the golden-haired demon god raised his hand. Demon-killing light condensed and aimed straight at Lin Tian. "Don't attack other people's disciples." A cold voice sounded. An old drunkard stood in front of him. The wine gourd at his waist floated out, and a faint divine light intertwined. Then the wine gourd trembled. An old drunkard stretched out his right hand and pulled out a sword of light. This sword of light was a little blurry and damaged, but the moment it appeared, it emitted a shockwave that suppressed the heaven and earth. It was terrifying. Seeing this sword of light, the four demon gods' expressions changed. Nine Spring Sword. It's that sect's legendary holy weapon. Damn it, wasn't this sword destroyed in the ancient era? The four of them were shocked. It was indeed destroyed, so it's damaged now. It's not even 1/10 of the original, an old drunkard said. But even so, the four demon gods' expressions were still very ugly and somewhat gloomy. The sealing technique of the ancient celestial lords, the Holy Spirit sword born in the Nine Springs Hell. "Who are you?" Staring at an old drunkard, the four demon gods' eyes became extremely sharp. "Just an ordinary human," an old drunkard said. In the distance, Lin Tian had already entered the depths of the canyon and arrived in front of the space-time door. He tilted his head and looked outside the valley. He saw the old drunkard holding a large sword of light. The powerful sword intent made his heart tremble uncontrollably. Let's go, kid, don't dawdle. An old drunkard's voice sounded. Lin Tian clenched his fists tightly and approached the space-time door step by step. An ancient aura rushed out. On the stone, a purple beam of light crossed, as immovable as a mountain, full of mystery and majesty. This time, Lin Tian approached the space-time door, but he didn't feel any pressure because a faint light screen appeared on his body, blocking all the pressure outside. This was an old drunkard's original light. Soon, he really came to the edge of the space-time door. One step, and he would be able to cross it and enter the second heaven. Master, you must live. He looked at an old drunkard. This was the first time he called him master. An old drunkard had his back to Lin Tian, and the corners of his mouth curled up. No problem, go. The nine-spring sword vibrated, shining in all directions. An old drunkard's black hair danced wildly, and a heaven-shaking divine aura spread out, shaking the four demon gods so much that they couldn't help but take a step back. 3,000 great Tao, 12 king bodies. May you surpass the prodigies of all races and stand at the peak of the great Tao. Insolent, the four demon gods shouted. Suddenly, four terrifying demonic auras rushed out, and four balls of light rushed out. An old drunkard laughed, and his voice shook the sky. He swung his sword and directly shattered the vast sky. Let's go, an old drunkard shouted. Lin Tian stood in front of the space-time door, staring at an old drunkard's heroic figure as he fought the four demon gods alone. He raised his head and looked at the demon burial valley, and three figures flashed across his mind. Lin Shi, Su Shu, and Ji Yu. Finally, he looked at an old drunkard. Without hesitation, he clenched his fists and stepped into the purple door. There were no light waves, no ripples, and his figure disappeared instantly. He really left. Humph. It's okay, he's just an ant. The four demon gods' eyes were indifferent. The ant in your mouth will definitely make the 10 heavens tremble before long. The old drunkard's black hair danced wildly. At this moment, it was as if he had transformed into a war god that could pierce through the heavens. He waved the nine-spring sword, forcing the four demon gods to tremble. However, you won't have the chance to see that day. Today, you will all die. Boom! A violent divine aura rushed out, shaking the sky and the universe. The entire demon burial valley instantly sank by a few feet. The four demon gods' faces darkened. In an instant, the five figures fought. Demonic light and divine light flashed, and the destructive power was vast and mighty. In the endless darkness and shocking pressure, Lin Tian couldn't see anything in his field of vision. At this moment, there was only a faint layer of light around his body, protecting him firmly. This is the light of origin of the old drunkard, Lin Tian muttered to himself. He couldn't see anything around him, and his divine consciousness couldn't capture anything either. Lin Tian could feel that he was moving quickly, as if there was an invisible, fierce beast dragging him. Just like that, he didn't know how long had passed. Finally, there was a bit of light in front of him, and the surrounding darkness quickly dissipated. Whoosh! The endless darkness completely disappeared. In the next moment, he found himself standing on an ordinary bluestone. Looking around, he was in a vast primitive forest. Any random tree was shockingly thick. Moreover, there was an extremely dense spirit chi in the air. This level of spirit chi surprised Lin Tian. This is the second heavens? He was shocked. Feeling the fluctuation of spirit chi in the air, the density was at least 5 times that of the world he was in before. Standing on the spot, he looked around. He didn't see any traces of the space-time door, but the environment was very unfamiliar to him. It seems that this is indeed the second heavens, Lin Tian muttered to himself. The space-time door of the first heavens didn't seem to be connected to the space-time door of the second heavens. It seemed to be an irregular transmission. He didn't care about this. Standing on the spot, he couldn't help but look up at the sky. He didn't know how much time had passed from the first heavens to the second heavens. Now he was a little worried about an old drunkard's battle. After all, it was 1 against 4, and his opponents were the monster gods of the monster clan who had been sealed since ancient times. Each of them was astonishingly strong. Standing on the spot, he didn't move for a long time. In the blink of an eye, a quarter of an hour passed. Lin Tian clenched his fist, and 2 rays of light flashed in his eyes. That old drunkard must be fine. He didn't know why, but he was full of confidence in an old drunkard. Even if he was facing 4 ancient monster gods alone, he didn't think that an old drunkard would lose. He believed that an old drunkard would definitely survive and kill the 4 of them. Even if it was for that woman back then, an old drunkard would definitely not lose. He would definitely kill all the monster gods. Raising his head, Lin Tian looked ahead and finally moved. This was undoubtedly the second heavens. After all, he entered through the space-time door of the first heavens and came here. He looked around and paused for a moment. Then, he followed a small path and walked out of the primeval forest. Coming to this world, he wanted to become stronger as soon as possible and then return to the first heavens. After walking along the path for a while, he sensed a wisp of monster chi fluctuation. He tilted his head and looked over. He saw a purple-clothed girl standing on the fork in the path not far away. 2 huge scorpions were slowly approaching the girl. 4th-grade monster beast, Spirit Ridge Scorpion. Lin Tian frowned. 4th-grade monster beasts weren't weak. They were comparable to the divine pulse realm. Seeing that the girl was a little weak, he directly slashed out 2 sword rays. Puff, puff, 2 bloody mists exploded. The 2 Spirit Ridge Scorpions didn't even have time to scream before they fell into a pool of blood on the spot. Lin Tian glanced at the girl. He didn't stop and continued to walk forward. Chapter 297. The girl in purple was about 16 years old. She smiled sweetly like a lively little elf and caught up with Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. Benefactor, what's your name? Benefactor, where do you live? Benefactor, where are you going? The girl was like a chatterbox. She surrounded Lin Tian and asked him this and that. Her beautiful big eyes blinked from time to time. Lin Tian could not be bothered with her and continued to walk forward. Finally, the girl was a little angry. She gritted her teeth and said, "How dare you not look at my beauty? How hateful!" Lin Tian was speechless. This girl was a little too narcissistic. However, he noticed that although the girl looked weak, she was not simple. Her cultivation base was very powerful. Hey, where are you going? The girl asked. You're not calling me benefactor anymore? Lin Tian replied, those 2 scorpions can't hurt me. I'm just teasing you. Teasing me? Little girl, have you ever considered that I'm older than you? Lin Tian was speechless. The girl in purple was a little dissatisfied. You look at most 1 year older than me. How dare you call me little girl? Lin Tian felt that it was best not to argue with this girl. He could tell that she was a restless person. Immediately, he continued to walk forward. Sigh, why are you walking so fast? The girl chased after him and said with a playful smile, My name is Bai Chiu. What about you, benefactor? Don't call me benefactor. Lin Tian felt a little awkward. Okay, benefactor. What's your name, benefactor? The girl blinked and said. Lin Tian was speechless. He could not stand the girl calling him benefactor and finally told her his real name. Then the girl kept following him. Why are you following me? He stopped. It had to be said that the girl in purple was very beautiful. She was even more beautiful than Ji. She was like a fairy in a painting. She had a kind of otherworldly temperament. But even so, following by his side like this would cause him some trouble. Bai Chiu blinked. Don't we have the same goal? We can travel together. Same goal? Travel together? Lin Tianyi was stunned. How could the 2 of them have the same goal? Bai Chiu said, Wuji Gate is recruiting disciples recently. Aren't you going to Wuji Gate? Wuji Gate? You don't know? I don't know. Lin Tian was very honest. Bai Chiu looked at Lin Tian strangely and said, The Limitless Immortal School is extremely powerful and is one of the 10 great sects of this region. Apart from the other 9 sects of the 10 great sects, no other power can suppress them. Of course, those few ancient holy lands of inheritance are not included in this list. They are all colossi that have transcended the mortal world. Lin Tian narrowed his eyes. one of the 10 great sects. It just so happens that I'm also looking for a suitable sect to join. According to what you said, let's travel together. Lin Tiandao. He had just arrived in this heaven realm. If he wanted to become stronger quickly, joining a sect was undoubtedly the best choice. The reason why he traveled with Bai Qiu was because he didn't know anything about this heavenly realm. He didn't even know where the limitless immortal school, which was currently recruiting disciples, was, so it was naturally good to travel with Bai Qiu. You just doubted me when I said we should travel together. Bai Qiu muttered. Just now is just now, and now is now. Lin Tian said without blushing. Bai Qiu snickered and said, You're so thick-skinned. Lin Tian. Bai Qiu was going to the Wuji Gate alone. Now that he had a companion, he was very happy. The two of them traveled together. Soon, a huge mountain range appeared in front of them. There were dozens of main peaks as far as the eye could see. It was like a celestial mountain. Lin Tian even saw a few colorful cranes circling around the main peaks. We're here. The Wuji Gate is just ahead, Bai Qiu said. Lin Tian was shocked. There were dozens of main peaks and colorful cranes circling around them. He could even feel the astonishing spirit qi from afar. It was more than twice as powerful as the outside world. It was simply a cultivation paradise. Not long ago, he felt that the Burning Sun sect was already very big. However, when he saw the Wuji Gate, he felt that the Burning Sun sect was nothing. The gap was too big. Hey, what are you thinking about? Bai Qiu pushed him. Nothing. Lin Tian came to his senses and shook his head. The Wuji Gate was located in a huge mountain range. The dozens of main peaks were very majestic. At first glance, it was very different from an ordinary mountain. Lin Tian followed Bai Qiu and the other people who came to join the sect. They successfully entered the Wuji Gate and truly entered the Wuji Gate. After entering the Wuji Gate, Lin Tian was even more shocked. The spirit qi in the air was too shocking. He looked ahead and saw a black mass of heads. He couldn't help but feel dizzy. There were so many people. There were at least 100,000 of them. Why are there so many people? He frowned. Bai Qiu said, The Wuji Gate is one of the top 10 sects in the heaven realm. It's very famous. It's normal for so many people to come to join the sect. Moreover, Bai Qiu looked around and whispered, It said that the Wuji Gate has a secret technique left behind by an ancient celestial lord. It's very powerful. Everyone in the world wants to get their hands on it. A secret technique left behind by an ancient celestial lord? Lin Tianyi was shocked. Not long ago, an old drunkard had used the ancient celestial lord's secret technique, the four-symbol seal, in a battle with the 4 monster gods. It shocked the 4 monster gods who had reached the end of the enlightenment realm. One could imagine how terrifying the ancient celestial lord's secret technique was. Now that he heard Bai Qiu mention that the Wuji Gate had a secret technique left behind by an ancient celestial lord, his mind immediately became active. The ancient celestial lord's secret technique was priceless. If he could get it, it would be a great treasure. It's just a legend. No one has ever gotten it. Bai Qiu said. Although he said that, Bai Qiu's eyes were shining. He stared at the Wuji Gate like a money grubber. It was as if he wanted to swallow the Wuji Gate in one gulp. Lin Tianyi was speechless. You're too obvious. You're almost drooling. Lin Tian said. Bai Qiu was dissatisfied. How can you say something like drooling to a beautiful lady? That's so rude. Lin Tian was speechless. This guy was too narcissistic. After a pause, he asked, By the way, what's the celestial lord's secret technique you mentioned just now? What's so powerful about it? The divination divine technique can simulate all things in heaven and earth. It can even simulate other divine abilities. It's called the Battle Saint technique. Bai Qiu said. Lin Tianyi was shocked. Simulate all things in heaven and earth and simulate other divine abilities? Now that he thought about it, this secret technique was really terrifying. It could even simulate other divine abilities. This immediately made him excited. Although he now had the 4-symbol seal, it would be great if he could get another ancient celestial lord's secret technique. By the way, what do you mean by ancient celestial lords? Lin Tian asked. Hey. This guy. I feel that you're very powerful. Why don't you know some common sense? Bai Qiu stared at Lin Tian strangely. Lin Tian said unhurriedly, I've been cultivating deep in the mountains. I've only just come out, so I rarely come into contact with the outside world. Is that so? Bai Qiu was a little suspicious. Of course, I've been lying. Lin Tian said seriously. Bai Qiu said, ancient celestial lords were all peak chaotic realm cultivators. They existed even longer than the Antiquity Age. As for how long they were, I'm not sure. Legend has it that in the era before the Antiquity Age, there were a total of 9 celestial lords in the 10-direction celestial domain. All of them were invincible. Peak chaotic realm? Lin Tian sucked in a cold breath. In that case, the ancient celestial lords were people who had reached the end of their cultivation path. They're indeed worthy of the word invincible. He muttered to himself, so what if they're invincible? In front of the power of time, even if you're invincible, you can only die in silence. Bai Qiu curled his lips. Lin Tian shook his head. He had heard about this from an old drunkard. He had to admit that for those invincible experts who had reached the end of their cultivation path, it was a very sad thing to slowly reach the end of their lives under the long river of time. But this young lady is different. A person with such outstanding natural talent like this young lady will surely be able to sweep through the 9 heavens, sweep through the 9 underworlds, break through the eternal barrier of the 10th level of the heavens, and trample the river of time beneath my feet. Bai Qiu said proudly. Lin Tian couldn't help but say, can you not be so narcissistic? This is confidence. Lin Tian was really defeated by this girl. He couldn't be bothered to say anything else. Many cultivators entered the Wuji Gate to seek an apprenticeship. They all walked toward a platform in front of them. The platform was made of some unknown material. It was covered with all kinds of mysterious patterns. It was used to test the cultivators who came to seek an apprenticeship. Only those who completely crossed the platform could stay. Unqualified. 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 Many people went to take the test, but more than 90% of them couldn't pass the platform. Lin Tian counted carefully. More than 1,000 people took the test, but only one person passed. That's ridiculous. Lin Tian was shocked. Bai Qiu didn't think so. What's so ridiculous about that? As I said before, the Wuji Gate is very famous, so the entry requirements are naturally very strict. Not only do you have to be very talented in cultivation, but you also have to reach the spiritual sea realm before the age of 23. Otherwise, you can forget about entering the Wuji Gate. Of course, it's different if you have a special king body. If that's the case, even if you're still a baby in swaddling clothes, the gate master of the Wuji Gate will cry and beg you to join the sect. Even other sects will come to fight for you. Special king body. Lin Tianwei was stunned. He vaguely remembered that an old drunkard seemed to have mentioned the words king body before. Don't tell me you don't know this? Bai Qiu stared at him. I don't know. Lin Tian nodded. Bai Qiu was a little speechless. He said, the so-called king body can be understood as some special bloodlines. These bloodlines are often blessed with unique cultivation talent, and their combat strength is far superior to cultivators of the same level. In the history of cultivation, there are 12 king bodies recorded in ancient books. They are the barbarian king body, heavenly demon body, desolate demon body, holy light body, immortal spirit body, void body, thunder god body, 5 elements body, Taiyin body, Taiyang body, chaotic body, and the never-before-seen reincarnation body. End of chapter. Chapter 298. Reading on a mobile phone, Lin Tian was a little surprised. Counting carefully, there were a total of 12 types of king physiques in this world. Are king physiques really that powerful? He asked. Please search product #book YinNet to see the most complete novel. Bai Qiu rolled her eyes. Of course they're very powerful. Otherwise, why would they be called king physiques? You can understand it more simply. The so-called king physique is a physique that can be called a king. It can defeat cultivators of the same level as easily as eating and drinking. Lin Tian was secretly shocked. A physique that could be called a king. A total of 12 types. After a pause, he asked again, then, how do you tell if a person has a king physique and what kind of king physique it is? You have so many questions. Bai Qiu curled her lips. Lin Tian smiled and said, Lady Bai Qiu, you're the #1 prodigy who will step on the river of time. Please help an ignorant mortal like me solve these small doubts. Bai Qiu immediately became happy. Each king physique has different characteristics. For example, the barbarian king physique has infinite strength and can throw mountains. The immortal spirit physique is naturally close to the Tao and can be called a carrier of the Tao. The 5 elements physique can freely control the Tao of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. The thunder god physique is overbearing and can draw out a sea of thunder with one punch. The chaos physique is the most terrifying. The body can merge with chaos and control the power of chaos. Bai Qiu described the characteristics of a few king physiques and said, of course, these are just some characteristics. If you want to tell if a person has a king physique and what kind of king physique it is, you can tell at a glance by looking at the origin. Lin Tian nodded and asked, what about the reincarnation physique? He was naturally curious about the strongest reincarnation physique. Bai Qiu shook her head and said, I'm not sure. The reincarnation physique has never appeared before. Even now, many experts doubt its existence. This physique is only a theoretical one that the 9 celestial lords deduced. It's said that once the reincarnation physique appears, there will be no king physique in the world. So strong. Lin Tianyi was shocked. Once the reincarnation physique appears, there will be no king physique in the world. This sentence was a bit too exaggerated. Bai Qiu curled his lips. Since it has never appeared, you can brag about it all you want. No one in the world has any evidence to refute it. Why do I feel like you're unhappy? Lin Tian was curious. Really? How can you tell that I'm unhappy? Why would I be unhappy? Then why are you grinding your teeth? I like it. There were a lot of people who entered Wuji Gate to be apprenticed to their masters, and they were all taking the test. After a long time, it was Lin Tian and Bai Qiu's turn. The 2 of them were very young, but their cultivations were very strong. Naturally, they passed the test very easily. In the end, the test was completed. Only a little more than 100 people out of the hundreds of thousands passed the platform. Of the hundreds of thousands of people, only a little more than 100 remained. Lin Tian shook his head. This elimination rate was simply too shocking. Bai Qiu said, this is only the first round. There's still one more round of testing. I estimate that half of the people will be eliminated. There are more? Lin Tian was surprised. Bai Qiu seemed to know a lot. He said, there are 49 main peaks in the Wuji Gate, and the methods of cultivation on each peak are different. We've only passed the basic test. There will be elders taking us to dozens of main peaks later. We have to pass the test on one of the main peaks before we can officially become a disciple of the Wuji Gate. Lin Tian was secretly surprised. From the looks of it, only a few dozen people out of the hundreds of thousands would be able to make it. The requirements for becoming a disciple of the Wuji Gate are really shockingly strict. Lin Tian muttered to himself. At that moment, several elders appeared in the air far away. Those people looked very old, but all of them looked very energetic and full of vigor. These people were the elders of the Wuji Gate. They were all in the airborne realm. They stepped on the void and briefly explained what was going to happen next. Then they led Lin Tian and the others to the 49 main peaks. Wuji Gate was very wide. Lin Tian followed the others and looked around. He saw that there were many tall and straight strange trees planted in the gate. They were all species that were rarely seen in the outside world. At the same time, under the sunlight, some of the divine plants were even surrounded by specks of light. It gave people a very dreamy feeling, as if they were in a fairyland. Lin Tian praised in his heart, as expected of the so-called celestial sect. Soon, dozens of peaks appeared in front of them, all surrounded by light and mist. It was also at this time that the elders of the Wuji Gate stopped. At this place, the spirit qi in the air was even denser. Lin Tian glanced at the cultivators beside him, only to see that all of their eyes were shining as they stared at the dozens of main peaks in front of them. Buzz! Suddenly his body trembled. The mysterious iron sword in his sea of consciousness vibrated on its own and shone with specks of light. The light was dazzling and colorful. It rushed out from the bottom of his sea of consciousness, causing his sea of consciousness to tremble and ripple. Lin Tianyi was shocked. He looked in the direction of the ripples and saw that there was another peak on the other side of the 49 main peaks. However, unlike the other 49 main peaks, this one looked a little short and lonely, even barren. It was not much better than the ordinary mountains in the mortal world. Lin Tian's heart skipped a beat as he stared at this mountain. "Bai Qiu, what is that?" he asked. The mysterious iron sword in his sea of consciousness reacted on its own and pointed directly at the mountain. This made him very curious. Bai Qiu raised his head and looked over. A long time ago, the limitless immortal sect had 50 main peaks, and that green mountain was naturally one of the 50 main peaks. However, later on, the spirit energy on the main peak suddenly weakened to a low point, and it was far from being comparable to the other main peaks. Even if a large-scale spirit gathering formation was set up, it was useless, so it was gradually abandoned. So now, the limitless immortal sect only has 49 main peaks left. Of course, although it is abandoned, it used to be a main peak. Wuji Gate did not remove it and still keeps it in the gate of heaven. Lin Tian nodded. After a pause, he asked, "Can I go to that main peak to cultivate?" "What?" Bai Qiu was stunned, and his eyes widened. Lin Tian said, "I want to go to that main peak to cultivate." The mysterious iron sword in his sea of consciousness reacted and pointed directly at the mountain. No matter how stupid he was, he knew that the mountain was not simple. It must contain some shocking secret. "Yes, you can. However, what's the point of cultivating there? It's purely a waste of time. Although there are some large formations set by Wuji Gate on the mountain that can be used for cultivation, the effect is not comparable to that of the other 49 main peaks." Bai Qiu stared at Lin Tian seriously and said, "Also, as I said, that main peak has been abandoned. The spirit chi on it is shockingly low, even worse than the outside world. If you go to that main peak, you can't go to the other main peaks to cultivate. It's basically a waste of time and life." "Yes, I understand." Lin Tian nodded. "Good," Bai Qiu said. Right at this moment, the few old men leading the group looked at Lin Tianyi's group and said, "The deacons of the 49 main peaks have already left the mountain. You can head to the main peak of your choice to take the test. Remember, each person only has one chance to choose a main peak and only one chance to take the test. Do you understand?" "Understood," everyone said in unison. Since they came to Wuji Gate, these people naturally knew the rules of the Wuji Gate's disciple selection. Immediately, the group of cultivators spread out and rushed to the main peak of their choice excitedly. In the blink of an eye, the place became much more spacious. Lin Tian glanced at the 49 main peaks and came to the elders of Wuji Gate. He bowed and said, "Elders, may I go there to cultivate?" As he said that, he pointed at the green peak not far away. As soon as he said that, everyone around was shocked. "Lin Tian, you're crazy. What are you doing?" Bai Qiu was so angry that he wanted to rush up and bite him. This fellow, he had clearly told him that the Green Mountain Peak was already ruined, that it was not suitable for cultivation, and that he could not cultivate there. But this fellow completely ignored it, and actually asked the elders of the Limitless Immortal School to allow him to go to the Green Mountain Peak to cultivate. Nearby, many people looked at Lin Tian and shook their heads. This guy doesn't seem to have a good aptitude. He's worried that he can't pass the test of the other main peaks, so he took the initiative to ask to cultivate on the Green Peak. After all, that Green Peak no longer has a peak master and deacons, so there's no need to take any test. As long as he's willing, he can directly enter that Green Peak to cultivate and stay in Wuji Gate. But what's the point of going to that abandoned Green Peak? It is said that the spirit chi there is almost dried up, and the effects of the various large arrays have also been greatly reduced. It is better to cultivate in the outside world than to cultivate there. It is said that the spirit chi in the air outside is much denser than the spirit chi on that green peak. You can't say that. Although that green peak is no longer suitable for cultivation, it used to be one of the main peaks of Wuji Gate. If you enter that main peak to cultivate, you can be regarded as a disciple of Wuji Gate. This is also a kind of identity. With this identity, you can occasionally travel around the world and make many people afraid. Is he doing this for this reason? It should be. After all, people like him have appeared before. It's said that many people had the same idea in the past and voluntarily entered that green peak to cultivate, but in the end, they only wasted their time. Even if they regretted it, they could only wither away on that green peak. Now, no one chooses that green peak anymore. Who would have thought that after so many years, such a person would jump out? It's really stupid. Isn't it enough to learn from the mistakes of others? Short-sighted. Even if I can't pass the test of the other main peaks, I won't go to that green peak to waste my life. Many people shook their heads, and some of them even looked at him with disdain. Bai Qiu gritted his teeth, grabbed Lin Tian's right hand tightly, and said angrily, "You're not allowed to go." Lin Tian knew that Bai Qiu was doing this for his own good. However, he still shook his head and bowed once more. He then stared at the elders of the everlasting immortal sect. "Seniors, this junior wishes to enter the Azure Mountain Peak to cultivate. I hope that seniors can grant me permission." Chapter 299. The elders of Wuji Gate stared at Lin Tian strangely. It had been a long time since someone volunteered to go to the Green Mountain to cultivate. They didn't expect another person to show up today. One of them said, "Once you enter the Green Mountain, you don't need to take any tests to stay. But young man, you have to think carefully. Once you enter the Green Mountain, you can't go to other main peaks, and you can't leave the sect because there is no spiritual chi on the Green Mountain. In other words, once you enter the Green Mountain, you can stay in Wuji Gate, but it will be very difficult for you to continue on the path of cultivation. Do you understand?" "Understood." Lin Tian nodded seriously. The elders looked at each other, and one of them said, "Well, we'll do as you say. Go to the Green Mountain to cultivate." Although the Green Mountain was abandoned, it was still one of the main peaks of the sect, so the limitless immortal sect would naturally not remove it from the sect. Since the Green Mountain still existed, there was no reason for the limitless immortal sect to refuse if someone requested to go there to cultivate. As for the test, it was just a meaningless Green Mountain. Wuji Gate certainly wouldn't spend any effort on the test. Therefore, over time, as long as someone wanted to go to the Green Mountain to cultivate, they didn't need to take any tests. "Thank you, elders." Lin Tian bowed. Bai Qiu suddenly became anxious and yelled at the elders, "Hey, you can't do this. You're harming people." Lin Tian hurriedly apologized to the elders and pulled Bai Qiu aside. "Damn it, what are you doing?" Bai Qiu stared at Lin Tian and gritted her teeth. She looked like she wanted to bite someone. Lin Tian spent a lot of effort to calm Bai Qiu down and said, "Don't worry. I have my own ideas." "What ideas? Tell me," Bai Qiu asked. "Well, it's hard to say." Lin Tian on Dao. Bai Qiu immediately gritted her teeth again. "You want to hide it from me? I don't want to talk to you anymore." Lin Tian. After thinking for a bit, he said, "I feel like this green peak is a bit strange. Perhaps the divine derivation technique you spoke of is contained within this green peak. If I go to Green Mountain to cultivate, I might be able to find this ancient celestial venerable's precious technique." He spoke very seriously. However, according to his thoughts, Bai Qiu would definitely not believe him. Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, Bai Qiu clutched his stomach and laughed. "You're so old-fashioned. Don't tell me you've read too many biographies and think that all the treasures are in the wasteland under the cliffs. Although that kind of thing happens occasionally, you can't just randomly see a cliff and think like that. It'll spoil your brain." "I'll just take it as a chance." Lin Tian smiled. "You're gambling with your future." Bai Qiu curled his lips. Lin Tian shook his head. "That's not necessarily true." "How confident?" Bai Qiu was speechless. However, she rolled her eyes and said, "Well, since you're so confident, maybe you'll really be lucky. Then you should go there and look for it. If you find it, remember to tell me." "What if I can't find it?" Lin Tian asked casually. "Spend a year or two. If I can't find it, I'll just leave. Who would be stupid enough to stay on that green peak for the rest of their lives?" Lin Tian was amused. That's easy for you to say. If you leave the sect by force, you'll be hunted down by the Wuji Gate. So, what if you want to kill me? What's the big deal? You can hide deep in the mountains and forests. This heaven realm is so vast. If you really want to hide, I don't believe that limitless immortal school can search every corner of this world. Bai Qiu said indifferently. Lin Tian, you really know how to comfort people? He said. Bai Qiu said proudly. My brother used to praise me like that. Lin Tian. Not long after, because Bai Qiu still had to find the main peak for the test, Lin Tian asked Bai Qiu to leave first. Then he walked toward the green peak not far away. When he came close to the green peak, he saw that the whole mountain looked more barren than it looked from afar. The stairs leading to the peak had long been ruined. Following the dilapidated stone steps, Lin Tian soon arrived at the green peak. The green peak was rather spacious, and there was a palace. The palace was surrounded by old vines, and it was obvious that it had been abandoned for a long time. Lin Tian looked around. There was no one on the green peak. Just as the other cultivators said, it had been abandoned for a long time. It's good that there's no one here. Lin Tian thought to himself. He took a deep breath and looked at the green peak. His eyes became serious. He spread out his divine sense and searched around. Not long after, he walked along this green peak a few times, using his divine sense to scan almost every corner, but he did not find anything out of the ordinary. Instead, he found many rabbits, foxes, and other small animals. All of them were very fat and strong. When they saw him, they did not show any fear or dread. Instead, there were some small rabbits that leaned towards him, seeming to be quite intelligent. About 4 hours later, he reappeared in front of the palace on the peak. Strange, he whispered to himself. Previously, the iron sword in his sea of consciousness did have a strange movement and pointed directly at the green peak. However, he had searched for so long, but there was no reaction at all. He immersed his mind into the bottom of his sea of consciousness and tried to communicate with the mysterious iron sword. However, the iron sword did not have any reaction. It was like a stubborn old ox, not moving at all. Lin Tian was speechless. After a long while, he shook his head and walked towards the other areas of the green peak. After walking around for nearly an hour, he saw several large cultivation arrays. There were large arrays that helped to cultivate one's sea of knowledge, and also large arrays that helped to temper one's body. However, the effects of these arrays were not very good, and they were basically abandoned. I cultivate the array control technique. Relying on my soul force, I can reactivate some large arrays. Although I can't completely restore them to their original state, it should be no problem to restore 40%. I don't need to worry too much about cultivation. Lin Tian said to himself. The sky had gradually darkened. Lin Tian came to the palace on the peak. It was already covered with dust, and there were even many spider webs. There was a moldy smell in the air. Lin Tian shook his head. With a shake of his right hand, a sword wind swept away all the dust and spider webs. After about a quarter of an hour, he had completely cleaned up the palace. After all, he might stay here for a long time. Hey! A crisp voice was heard. Bai Qiu ran up from the foot of the mountain. Lin Tian just walked out of the palace. After seeing Bai Qiu, he could not help but smile. How was your test? Bai Qiu snorted. Who am I? Of course, there is no problem. I was personally invited up by the Wuji Peak's deacon. You were quite impressive. Lin Tian was surprised. He had heard about the dozens of main peaks. The Wuji Peak was the first main peak of Wuji Gate. It was extremely difficult to cultivate there. Compared to that, he also knew what the green peak he was on was called. It was called the Fallen Immortal Peak. Of course, that was in the past. The Fallen Immortal Peak could no longer be considered a main peak. What about you? Did you find anything? Bai Qiu's eyes lit up. No. Lin Tian shook his head. Bai Qiu was a bit disappointed. She curled her lips and said, You were so confident that you could find a paragon skill here. Lin Tian laughed. How long has it been? You want a paragon skill? You have to spend some time. Well, you're right, Bai Qiu said. The sky gradually darkened. Not long after, Bai Qiu waved goodbye and left the Fallen Immortal Peak. The fallen immortal peak became quiet. Lin Tian sat on a green rock in front of the dilapidated palace. He looked around and saw that the Wuji Peak was shrouded in celestial light. It looked very mysterious and dreamy. Shaking his head, Lin Tian looked at the sky. The stars dotted the night sky, and there were streaks of silver light pouring down on the vast land. I wonder how that old guy is doing now, he muttered to himself. First heavenly region, Demon Burial Valley. Demonic light and divine light were vast and mighty. At this moment, the entire Demon Burial Valley was full of cracks, and the sky was shattered. An old drunkard was in the depths of the Demon Burial Valley. He was covered in blood, and his body was broken, but his expression did not change. He was indifferent. He was holding a light sword in his hand. It seemed a bit distorted in the void, but the sword momentum was terrifying. Human, his angry roar resounded in all directions. An old drunkard was facing two other figures. One was the golden-haired demon god, and the other was the silver-eyed demon god. At this moment, the two demon gods were extremely angry. Ancient demon gods are indeed not easy to kill, an old drunkard said. An old drunkard looked calm. There were two broken corpses lying at his feet. Their divine souls and origins had been completely obliterated. The golden-haired demon god and the silver-eyed demon god seemed to be a little violent. Their eyes were full of sinister light. The four demon gods had finally broken out of the seal, but in the blink of an eye, two of them were killed by a human from a later era. Even their origins were destroyed. They had completely disappeared from the world. How could they not be angry? You killed my comrade. This chapter does not end. Please turn the page. You must die. I'll kill you today and refine you into medicine. The two of them were furious. With a boom, the two of them emitted an even more terrifying demon aura. Gray demon aura swept through the sky and earth. You die, I live, an old drunkard said indifferently. With a clang, the nine-spring sword in an old drunkard's hand trembled. A mysterious and powerful wave spread out. The three terrifying forces collided with a boom. The scene was apocalyptic. Kill! Kill! The golden-haired demon god and the silver-eyed demon god roared in unison. They took out their Dharma treasures and charged towards an old drunkard. An old drunkard shook the nine-spring sword. Light shot into the sky and went towards the two demon gods. However, in the next moment, the three of them were shocked. They stopped and looked up into the sky. Thick demonic clouds covered the entire sky above the Demon Burial Valley. In the vast sky, a little girl appeared in the distance without making a sound. The girl was barefooted. Her white dress fluttered in the wind. She looked like the noblest fairy in the world. Her beautiful eyes were deep like the stars in the sky. An old drunkard's eyes narrowed. The golden-haired demon god and the silver-eyed demon god's faces changed drastically. Demon King, the golden-haired demon god, and the silver-eyed demon god were extremely emotional. They immediately knelt down in the void and worshipped the little girl. The little girl's face was expressionless. Her deep eyes looked into the depths of the Demon Burial Valley. In an instant, images appeared in her mind. From Lin Tian breaking the 3-inch stone tablet and releasing the 4 demon gods, to an old drunkard using his origin energy to protect Lin Tian and send him into the second heaven. Everything seemed to have reappeared on this land. Staring at Lin Tian's figure, who had rushed into the space-time portal, the little girl's eyes became even more profound. The golden-haired demon god was shocked. He quickly said, I'm sorry, Demon King. The ant that escaped. We wanted to kill him, but this human is too powerful. We have been sealed for too long, and our combat power has been weakened. Moreover, he has the 9-spring sword and the ancient heavenly lord's supreme secret skill. The silver-eyed demon god took over the conversation and said cautiously, but don't worry, Lord Demon King. We will kill this human immediately. As for the ant that escaped, we will find it and eliminate it after this. After all, that ant is this human's disciple and also has the ancient heavenly lord's secret skill. He cannot be left alive. The little girl stared into the depths. She glanced sideways at the golden-haired demon god and the silver-eyed demon god. You want to kill him? The little girl's clear and cold voice sounded. He is not of our race and has the ancient heavenly Lord's supreme secret skill. He cannot be allowed to live. That's right. Don't worry, Demon King. We will eliminate him as soon as possible. The golden-haired demon god and the silver-eyed demon god said hurriedly. The little girl's expression did not change. Her eyes were still profound. Two mists of blood exploded. The golden-haired demon god and the silver-eyed demon god were reduced to ashes. In the distance, an old drunkard frowned. The nine-spring sword trembled slightly. At the peak of the dome of heaven, the little girl lowered her head and stared at the old drunkard. Given his current strength, send him to the second heavenly layer. If anything unexpected happens, I will kill you. A cold voice rang out as the little girl's silhouette vanished without a trace. Whoosh! A cold wind swept through the demon burial valley, stirring up yellow sand. An old drunkard's clothes were stained with blood. He stared in the direction where the little girl disappeared and then looked at the space-time portal. He could not help but smile bitterly. Good boy. When did you hook up with the Demon King? The second heaven, Wuji Gate. After a night, it was the morning of a new day. Lin Tian woke up early in the morning. He faced the morning sun and began to breathe. Once again, he wandered around the fallen immortal peak, hoping to find something unusual. However, he was disappointed again. After searching for more than 2 hours, he still found nothing. There is indeed something unusual here. But how can I find it? Lin Tian frowned. He believed that the mysterious iron sword's reaction could not be wrong. At this moment, a few figures stepped on long swords and descended from the sky. They landed in front of Lin Tian. I heard that you are a new disciple of the fallen immortal peak. A blue-clothed youth narrowed his eyes and smiled as he walked towards Lin Tian. End of chapter. Chapter 300. 7 young men landed from the sky. All of them were about 23 or 24 years old, and most of them were at the 3rd level of the spiritual sea. New disciple. How about introducing yourself? The young man in blue narrowed his eyes. Behind him, the other 6 young men crossed their arms and stared at Lin Tian with interest. Lin Tian could see that they were not friendly, but he did not care. He walked around the young man in blue and went to the top of the mountain. You want to leave? Another voice rang out. Apart from the young man in blue, the other 6 young men surrounded Lin Tian at the same time. Get out of my way, Lin Tian said. He did not want to cause any trouble for the time being. Newcomer, don't you know how to respect your elder brothers? As your senior brothers, we are asking you a question. Why don't you answer? Hurry up. The young men stared at Lin Tian. At first, they sneered, but gradually, their expressions became cold. You don't have the aptitude, so you stay in Wuji Gate for some petty tricks. Shameless trash. Although Wuji Gate has kept this main peak, they let trash like you enter again and become a disciple of Wuji Gate like us. It's really infuriating. Trash like you. What right do you have to be called a disciple of the Gate of Immortals like us? If I were you, I would piss and suffocate myself to death. When I think of trash like you shamelessly staying in the Gate of Immortals, I feel uncomfortable all over. The young man in blue said coldly and slapped Lin Tian. Lin Tian moved sideways and dodged the young man in blue's palm. Get out of my way, he said. The young man in blue's face darkened. How dare you dodge? I advise you to stand still and let us beat you up to vent our anger. It will save us all the trouble. If you don't resist, it will be over in a few seconds. If you resist, it will hurt your muscles and bones. If you behave well, we will beat you up once every 3 days. If not, we will come here every day. The group of people said coldly. It was as if Lin Tian should let them beat him up. Lin Tian acted as if he didn't hear anything. He found a gap between them and prepared to leave. The blue-robed young man snorted coldly and attacked again, slapping toward him. This slap was not light. An ordinary sea of consciousness cultivator would not be able to block it. Lin Tian's face turned cold. He grabbed the youth's wrist and said, "Don't look for trouble." When he first entered Wuji Gate, he didn't want to cause any trouble. He endured it time and time again, but he didn't expect that these people were getting more and more out of hand. "Let go," the blue-clothed young man said coldly. "What's the point of saying so much? Beat him up and send him to bed to reflect for a few months. Do it. Remember not to kill him," the others said. As they spoke, they smirked and waved their fists at Lin Tian. A cultivator's daily life was hard and boring, so it was naturally good to have someone to vent their anger on. Lin Tian's face turned completely cold. At this time, he couldn't bear it even if he wanted to. He raised his right leg and kicked out. With a bang, he kicked the person in the front and sent him flying. He hit an old tree not far away and let out a muffled groan. "How dare you!" Slapped. As soon as the other person opened his mouth, he was slapped away by Lin Tianyi, and most of his teeth fell out. This time, the young men were shocked. This new owner of the fallen immortal peak didn't seem weak at all. "You actually have some strength?" The blue-clothed young man's face was gloomy. Lin Tian looked at the blue-clothed young man, raised his leg, and kicked the blue-clothed young man's abdomen. With a bang, the blue-clothed young man flew across the ground, leaving a long trace on the ground. In this way, this scene shocked the rest of the people. Standing up from the distance, the blue-clothed young man's face looked even gloomier. "It seems that your physical body is very strong. However, fighting isn't just about physical body. The key is martial arts and techniques." With a clang, the blue-clothed young man drew out a long sword and slashed out 7 light swords, each of which was very shocking. Light slashing sword technique, one of the top 10 martial arts techniques of Muyang Feng. "Let's see how you block it," the blue-clothed young man said coldly and slashed at Lin Tian. The 7 light swords moved horizontally and vertically, and rich true essence surged with extraordinary power. It was indeed very powerful and not comparable to ordinary martial arts techniques. Not far away, the young men sneered. The blue-clothed young man was the strongest among them. He had already cultivated the light slashing sword technique to an extremely high level, and very few people could block it. At this moment, they stared at Lin Tian as if they were staring at a corpse. They all rubbed their palms, waiting for Lin Tian to be injured so that they could rush up and beat Lin Tian together. Especially the 2 people who were kicked away by Lin Tian just now. Their eyes were even more vicious, and they had already thought of various torture methods. Clang! The sound of the swords was shocking, and the 7 light swords came in front of Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. Someone shouted excitedly, "Pierce through!" Lin Tian glanced at them indifferently, raised his right hand, and slapped down. Whoosh! 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 The 7 light swords were instantly smashed into pieces. His current physique was comparable to that of an elite in the airborne realm. How could a few light swords hurt his body? How is this possible? Impossible! In an instant, everyone's expression changed, especially the blue-clothed young man. His face was full of disbelief. His strongest light slashing sword was shattered so easily. Staring at Lin Tian again, the blue-clothed young man was a little shocked, and his face was slightly pale. "Let's go," the blue-clothed young man said in a deep voice. In just a moment, the blue-clothed young man experienced the strength of Lin Tian, who was much stronger than them. The other young men were shocked. After gritting their teeth, they all retreated with the blue-clothed young man. These people were not stupid. Lin Tian was able to shatter the blue-clothed young man's light slashing sword with a single slap. His strength was terrifying, and they admitted that they were no match for him. At this moment, Lin Tian stood in front of the 7 people, blocking their way. "What are you doing?" Their faces darkened. "You want to leave after you've done that?" Lin Tian said. Staring at the young men, his face was very calm, and he walked towards them step by step. The few of them could not help but retreat. The blue-clothed young man said in a deep voice, "Don't do anything stupid. We are all Muyang Feng's disciples." As if he did not hear the blue-clothed young man's words, Lin Tian said, I advise you to stand still and let me beat you up to vent my anger. It will save everyone a lot of trouble." Hearing this, the faces of the few people suddenly became a little ugly. This sentence was clearly what they said to Lin Tian, but now, Lin Tian returned it to them and only changed a few words. This was like a resounding slap in the face, causing a wave of anger to rise in the few people at the same time. "Let's fight it out with him. There are so many of us. If we attack together, there's no way we can't beat him." "Yes!" someone shouted. However, just as the three of them finished speaking, Lin Tian's figure appeared in front of them, and each of them was sent flying with a kick. This time, Lin Tian did not show mercy. The strength of each kick was shockingly strong, causing the three of them to vomit large mouthfuls of blood, each of them clutching their stomachs and rolling around in pain. They could not stand up for a long time. "If you don't resist, it will be over in a few breaths. If you resist, it won't be good if I hurt your bones," Lin Tian said. As soon as he finished speaking, he instantly appeared in front of another person, raised his right hand, and slapped out. With a bang, the person was sent flying, and hit hard on a blue stone not far away. The three people in blue retreated, and their faces all changed. For cultivators at the peak of the third level of the Sea of Consciousness were unable to stand up after just one hit. "Now there are only 3 of you left. I advise you to not resist." Lin Tian's face was expressionless. He said, "If you behave well, I'll just punch you to the ground. If you don't, I'll punch you a few more times and let you feel pain again and again without hurting your lives. At that time, don't blame me." The bodies of the young man in blue and the other 2 shook when they heard this. They were both embarrassed and furious. The words that they had said to threaten Lin Tian earlier had actually been completely returned to them by Lin Tian. "Don't go too far." One of them gritted his teeth. "Too far? Before you came here, you must not have thought of these 2 words." Lin Tian Dao. As he spoke, his pace did not change, and he went straight to the 3 people. Bang! Bang! With a kick and a slap, 2 young men were sent flying, vomiting blood and groaning in pain. The young man in blue glared at Lin Tian and slashed out with his sword. "Chi!" Lin Tian raised his hand and smashed the sword light with his palm. The next moment, he appeared in front of the young man in blue like a ghost. His left hand grabbed the young man's collar, and his right hand swung, slapping the young man's face left and right. "I told you not to resist," he said lightly. The loud slapping sound kept echoing in the fallen immortal peak, and it was not until dozens of breaths later that Lin Tian stopped. At this time, the young man in blue was bruised and swollen. His eyes could not be seen, and all his teeth had fallen out. "Get lost!" Lin Tian raised his hand and threw the young man in blue down the fallen immortal peak, rolling to the foot of the mountain like a sandbag. Then he walked toward the others step by step. What do you want to do?" Someone was terrified. "Send you down the mountain." Lin Tian was very calm. "Send us?" No, we will." Bang! Lin Tian raised his leg and kicked the person who spoke, sending him rolling to the bottom of the fallen immortal peak. Aren't you sending us down the mountain?" The other's expressions changed. Lin Tian said lightly, "Aren't I sending you down now?" Bang. "Ah, bang. Damn it, you actually, bang." In the blink of an eye, everyone was kicked down the fallen immortal peak by Lin Tian. Clapping his hands, Lin Tian looked at the sky, and the sun became brighter. "Let's go to the Sutra Library at Wuji Gate," he said to himself. It was his first time in the 2nd level of heaven, so he wanted to read some ancient books, at least to understand the composition of this world. The truly powerful martial arts and divine powers of Wuji Gate were placed on the dozens of main peaks, while the Sutra Library basically stored some ancient books on the history of cultivation and some ordinary martial arts. There were no restrictions on the disciples, and there were no deacons guarding it. As long as one was a disciple of Wuji Gate, anyone could go in and read. Lin Tian came to the Sutra Library and found an ancient book about the 2nd level of heaven. He opened it and read. Let's take a look at the so-called 10 great sects first. The ancient book recorded some of the major forces in the second level of heaven, the 10 great sects, including Wuji Gate, Qinghua Taoism, Xinga Taoism, Green Flame Immortal Sect, Black Sun Sect, Kangluo Immortal Sect, Northern Horizon Sect, Rui Immortal Palace, Golden Feather Immortal Sect, and Windless Immortal Pavilion. These 10 great sects all had immortal ascension powerhouses, and they had been passed down for a very long time. Lin Tian continued reading and found that in addition to the 10 great sects, there were also countless small sects in this heaven. Of course, their strength was not very good, and they were far from being comparable to the 10 great sects. As for the 10 great sects, there were 5 extraordinary behemoths above the 10 great sects: the Heavenly Monster Mountain, the 2 sacred lands of the human clan, and 2 great ancient families. Wantong Sacred Ground, Taishian Sacred Ground, Anciently Family, and Ancient by Family. Lin Tian muttered to himself. Staring at the ancient book, Lin Tian's expression suddenly changed. By family? He immediately thought of Bai Qiu. End of chapter. Chapter 301. Reading on mobile phone. The ancient families referred to the big families that had been passed down from the ancient times. Whether it was their strength or heritage, they were astonishingly powerful. They were very frightening and were the top forces in the second heaven. Reading the full text. More information. Lin Tian stared at the ancient book in his hand. When he saw the words, ancient by family, his expression suddenly became a little strange. That narcissistic girl. Could she be a member of the ancient by family? He thought to himself, thinking about it. Although Bai Qiu was very narcissistic, her temperament was indeed extraordinary and had a kind of noble aura. But if she is a member of the Bai family, why would she come to the Wuji Immortal Sect just for the Zhong Tian divine art? Lin Tian muttered to himself. After a pause, he shook his head and was too lazy to think about it. Staring at the ancient book, there was another thing that surprised him. There was actually a demon holy land in the second heaven, which was enough to compete with the human holy land and the ancient families. This meant that the demon holy land in the second heaven had many transformed airborne realm monsters, many immortal realm monster kings, and maybe even grand virtue realm monster venerables. This is the second heaven. As expected, it is far from the first heaven. Lin Tian muttered to himself. In the first heaven, sects like the Burning Sun sect were already considered to be the top forces in the world. However, in the second heaven, there were at least hundreds of sects like the Burning Sun sect. Moreover, he discovered that in the second heaven, even some ordinary mortals could find simple martial skills and cultivation methods to cultivate. Therefore, there were many rogue cultivators in this heaven realm. It could be called a real world of cultivators. After a pause, Lin Tian opened the ancient book of the Wuji Immortal Sect. He looked at the history of the Wuji Immortal Sect and the various rules of the sect. One of them caught his attention. The disciples of each main peak are not allowed to trespass into other main peaks. If they want to enter, they must ask for permission from the main peak. Otherwise, they will be punished severely. No one can plead for mercy or stop them. Although the fallen immortal peak is useless, it was still one of the main peaks of the Wuji Immortal Sect. He muttered to himself. Lin Tian flipped through many books in the scripture depository hall. For hours later, he walked out of the hall and headed for the fallen immortal peak. Inside the limitless immortal sect, there were many disciples coming and going. When they saw Lin Tian, many of them pointed at Lin Tian. Look over there. It's that person who came to the fallen immortal peak to cultivate. That's him? That's right. He thinks he's smart and relies on that method to stay in the limitless immortal sect. Unfortunately, he can only be humiliated. How childish. If it wasn't for the fact that the fallen immortal peak used to be the main peak and was related to the direction and intersection of the underground spirit veins of the Wuji immortal sect, it would have long been moved away by the sect master and the elders. How could it continue to exist and give some mediocre people an opportunity to take advantage of it? It can't be considered an opportunity, right? After all, if one went to the fallen immortal peak, one would only be able to cultivate the ordinary martial skills of the limitless immortal sect, and would not be able to obtain any resources or medicinal pills from the sect. One would have to rely on oneself for everything. If you think about it, going to the abandoned main peak to cultivate is just having the identity of a disciple of the limitless immortal sect. For some trash, isn't this identity enough? When they walk out, just this identity alone is enough to make some unknown rogue cultivators and disciples of small sects fear them. Who knows, they might even be able to obtain a lot of benefits. That's true. However, it's miserable in the sect. There are a few disciples of the main peak who hate people who enter the fallen immortal peak. It's said that in the past few decades, anyone who enters the fallen immortal peak to cultivate has always been humiliated by the disciples of the main peak. Not only do they not gain anything on the path of cultivation, they're often beaten up and suffer. Many people discuss softly. Lin Tian's current divine sense was very powerful. Although these people's voices were not loud, he could still hear them clearly. However, he did not care much. Speaking of looking for trouble, someone had already looked for trouble in the early morning. Soon, following the familiar path, he returned to the bottom of the fallen immortal peak. The steps leading to the fallen immortal peak were originally very dilapidated. However, at this time, he saw many sword marks on the dilapidated stone steps. Some of the dilapidated stone steps became even more dilapidated, and the soil in many places was slashed out. Moreover, these sword marks extended all the way to the top of the fallen immortal peak. Lin Tian's face darkened slightly as he walked along the dilapidated stone steps toward the peak. The fallen immortal peak was not too high. Soon he had crossed more than half of the stone steps. Smash! Don't leave the wooden table and stone bench over there. Destroy them. Crack! From afar, Lin Tian heard someone's voice and the sound of objects breaking. He quickened his pace and soon reached the peak. He came to the front of the dilapidated hall on the peak. As he looked around, he saw many people standing in front of the hall. The 7 people in blue, who came to look for trouble in the early morning, were among them. He tilted his head and looked. The hall that he had tidied up had become even more dilapidated. Many gravel and withered grass had been thrown into it. The simple wooden table that he had made himself was smashed. The stone bench that he had found was also smashed and thrown aside. In an instant, his face turned completely cold. Seeing Lin Tian appear, the people in front of the hall stopped and looked at Lin Tian in unison. "Senior brother Liu, he's the one who injured us," the young man in blue said coldly. Beside the young man in blue, the other 6 young men naturally came as well. All of them stared fiercely at Lin Tian. In the early morning, the 7 of them were kicked down the fallen immortal peak by Lin Tian. They found some pills to heal their injuries. Then, they found 5 senior brothers of the 6th heavenly level of the Sea of Consciousness from their own main peak to come to the fallen immortal peak to seek revenge. When they found that Lin Tian was not on the peak, they vented their anger by smashing the wooden table and stone bench. They also found many gravel and withered grass and piled them in the hall that Lin Tian had tidied up. Seeing Lin Tian return, the 7 of them sneered. Their eyes were very sinister. "Junior brother, you're too arrogant to injure my Muyang Feng's disciple when you just entered the sect," a man in white said coldly. The man in white was called Lu Cheng. He was one of the 5 powerhouses of the 6th heavenly level of the Sea of Consciousness that the young man in blue had found. Lin Tian's face was cold as he walked forward step by step. Lu Cheng's face darkened slightly. "Newcomer, I'm..." Bang! Lin Tian came to the front of Lu Cheng. He lifted his leg and sent Lu Cheng flying with a kick. Lu Cheng crashed into the ruined hall not far away. Such a scene immediately made the others' faces change. "How dare you? How dare you treat our Mu?" Pa. Lin Tian's face was cold as he slapped another powerhouse of the 6th heavenly level of the Sea of Consciousness away. Blood splattered in the air. He had just gone to the scripture depository to look at the ancient books. When he came back, the main hall that he had tidied up was stuffed full of gravel and withered grass. The wooden table and stone bench that he had made himself were destroyed. Although this was not a big deal, such a vile act was unbearable for him. He did not want to say anything more to this group of people. He immediately suppressed them. How dare you? Bang! Another kick. Another powerhouse of the sixth heavenly level of the sea of consciousness was sent flying and rolled 7 feet away. Senior brothers, be careful. This person's body is very strong, the young man in blue shouted. With a clang, a sword chi flew over and directly pierced through the young man in blue. Blood splattered in the air. It was bright red and dazzling. Ah! The young man in blue screamed. He covered his injured abdomen and staggered back. At this moment, the young man in blue stared at Lin Tian with fear in his eyes. His abdomen was pierced by his sword. Clang! Puff! Another sword chi swept over. The young man in blue screamed. His left arm was pierced through. Lin Tian slashed out with his sword chi. However, he avoided the vital parts of the young man in blue. He had just arrived at the limitless immortal sect. It was not a big deal for him to fight with the disciples in the sect. However, if he killed someone, it would be a different situation. He did not dare to kill people at will now. Ah! The young man in blue screamed. His face became extremely pale. Along with the blue-robed young man, the other 6 young men felt their hearts palpitate. Right at this moment, the fourth one, senior brother Mu Yangfeng, who was in the 6th level of the Sea of Consciousness, took a step forward and pulled out a long sword. He stared at Lin Tian and said coldly, "Very good. You are very bold." Lin Tian had nothing to say. In a flash, he arrived in front of the young man. His speed was so fast that it was terrifying. "You!" Bang! Lin Tian grabbed the young man's head and used his right knee to hit the young man's abdomen. The young man immediately screamed. He covered his abdomen and half squatted on the ground. It was so painful that cold sweat flowed down his forehead. All around, everyone was shocked, including the 5th, 6th heavenly level of the Sea of Consciousness senior brother Myang Feng, who had not made a move. Even the young man in blue and the other 6 were frightened. They never thought that this new master of the fallen immortal peak would be so terrifying. Even the 6th heavenly level of the Sea of Consciousness cultivators could not resist in the slightest. Why would a person like you come to the fallen immortal peak? The 5th, 6th heavenly level of the Sea of Consciousness senior brother Myang Feng said in a low voice. His expression became extremely solemn. Lin Tian raised his hand and slashed with a beam of sword chi. "You!" Puff! The beam of sword chi swept across and sent the 5th young man flying. He spat out blood and fell to the ground awkwardly. In the blink of an eye, the 5th, 6th heavenly level of the Sea of Consciousness cultivators brought by the young man in blue all fell to the ground. None of them was a match for Lin Tian. Lin Tian was expressionless. He forced the other 6 young men who followed the young man in blue. "You, what do you want to do?" The 6 young men were terrified. Lin Tian's expression was cold. He forced forward and directly slapped one of the young men's cheeks. "Ah! Newcomer, how dare you? Ah! Bang! Don't hit! Bang! Stop, if our eldest senior brother knows, he will. Stop, stop quickly, Rees." Lin Tian's eyes were indifferent. He slapped the 6 young men one after another, making them all scream miserably. Their eyes showed fear. Of course, Lin Tian was very careful when he attacked, and he avoided the vital points every single time. Not only was he able to make these people feel heart-wrenching pain, he didn't injure their bones. For a time, the screams on the fallen immortal peak were endless. After a long time, Lin Tian stopped. A sword appeared in his hand. He pointed the sword at the young men and said, "Clean up the gravel and withered grass in the hall. Repair the broken wooden table and bring back the stone bench. Repair the stone steps that you destroyed with your sword. I want the complete stone steps." "What?" "We can clean up the broken stones and withered grass in the hall, and we can return the broken wooden tables and chairs to you. However, the stone steps are already broken, and you actually want us to make a complete set of stone steps? This is too much." "Absolutely not." The young men's faces turned pale. Lin Tian's face was cold. With a loud clang, the sword whistled. "You have no right to bargain now. You..." Lu Cheng's face was gloomy. You're too bold. If you really dare to do this, our peak master will never let you go. Lin Tian tilted his head and kicked Lu Cheng away. No matter what, the fallen immortal peak was once one of the 50 main peaks of the limitless immortal sect. Even though it declined later on, it still couldn't change the fact that it was once the main peak of the sect. How could those seniors who had once cultivated in the fallen immortal peak during its glory days endure such destruction? Your behavior not only violates the sect's rules, but it's also an insult to the past peak masters of the fallen immortal peak. Even if I cripple all of you, your peak masters can't say anything. Lin Tian Lung said coldly. In a chapter. Chapter 302. Reading on a mobile phone, Lu Cheng and the others all changed their expressions because Lin Tian was right. Although the fallen fairy peak had declined, there were still a few masters in the immortal reaching realm from this main peak. They were the seniors of the Wuji Gate. If they came to the fallen fairy peak and didn't cause too much trouble, it wouldn't be a big deal. They would just treat it as a fight between disciples of the gate. This kind of thing happened often, so it wasn't a big deal. However, if they were to cause a huge commotion and alarm the peak master of Muyang Peak, they would definitely be the ones to suffer. At that time, even if the peak master of Muyang Peak knew of the current state of the fallen immortal peak, in consideration of the dignity of the past peak masters of the fallen immortal peak, he would definitely severely punish them. Thinking of this, the group of people's faces all became very ugly. Lin Tianling looked at the group of people indifferently. Do you want to do it yourselves? Or do you want me to ask you to do it? You, bang. Someone opened his mouth and was directly kicked away by Lin Tianyi. Is there anyone else who wants me to ask you to do it? Lin Tianling said. The long sword in his hand shook, and the sound of the sword spread out, which was very harsh. The group of people's faces turned pale. It was obvious that he was threatening them. However, Lin Tian's strength was obvious to all. Even 5 masters in the 6th sky of the Soul Sense Sea couldn't defeat him. What else could they do now? At this time, they were really afraid that Lin Tianyi would be cruel enough to cripple them. At that time, they wouldn't even have a place to cry. In the end, someone gritted his teeth and moved toward the hall, starting to clean up the gravel and withered grass. That's right. Half of you go to repair the stone steps, Lin Tian said. The group of people gritted their teeth, but there was no other way. They could only reluctantly walk toward the stone steps. There were a total of 12 people. 4 were cleaning up the ruined hall, 2 were repairing the wooden tables and stone stools, and 6 were repairing the stone steps. At the stone steps, the 6 people were repairing the stone steps while looking at each other, secretly communicating with their eyes. Clang! At this moment, a sword light flew by and landed beside the 6 people's feet. Lin Tian stood on the fallen celestial peak and said indifferently, I advise you not to have any wicked ideas. You'd better fix this stone staircase obediently. Otherwise, the sword in my hand will not show any mercy. The faces of the 6 people instantly turned pale, and they involuntarily clenched their fists, all of them becoming obedient. After all, no one was willing to take a blow for nothing. Moreover, they believed that Lin Tian was not just joking. He would definitely not show any mercy. Because before this, someone had already taken a few blows from Lin Tian, and his body was still stained with a glaring blood red. Damn it, some people were furious. However, even though he was angry, he could only keep it in his heart. The sun in the sky was extremely fierce. Even though this was an immortal sect, the oppressive heat was still unbearable. The 6 of them were halfway up the fallen immortal peak. They found complete stones to repair the stone steps. Soon, more than an hour had passed. It was also at this time that someone passed by and noticed them. All of them revealed a surprised expression. Isn't that Muyang Feng's senior brother Lu Cheng? Why is he here? That's Muyang Feng's senior brother Lu Meng. Over there are all Muyang Feng's people. They seem to be repairing the stone steps of the fallen immortal peak. Is that so? Seems to be the case. What's going on? Seeing this scene, many people had a strange expression on their faces. Lu Cheng and the other 5 people's faces were burning. They were the dignified disciples of Muyang Feng, and they had been cultivating in the sect for more than 2 years. Now, they were being watched by others. Moreover, they were repairing the broken stone steps of the fallen immortal peak. This was a great loss of face. All of them lowered their heads, and their hatred for Lin Tian could be said to have reached its peak. "Don't be lazy," a cold voice rang out. Immediately, a sword light flew from the top of the fallen immortal peak. The 6 people trembled at the same time and quickly moved again. They were at the mercy of others, and at this time, they could not resist. At the foot of the fallen immortal peak, many people raised their heads and looked at the peak. Because the fallen immortal peak was not very high now, and because these people were all practitioners, some people vaguely saw other figures busy at the peak, and all of their expressions changed greatly. Someone is tidying up the hall on the peak, and someone is repairing the wooden tables and moving the stone stools. They are all Muyang Feng's people. That new owner of the fallen immortal peak is actually threatening them with a sword. My God, he actually forced Muyang Feng's people to do manual labor here? Defy the heavens. Everyone was dumbfounded. Soon, the news spread throughout the Wuji Gate as if it had grown wings. In the blink of an eye, the new owner of the fallen immortal peak detained 12 of Muyang Feng's senior brothers to do manual labor in the fallen immortal peak, tidying up the hall, repairing the stone steps, and building new wooden tables and stone stools. Immediately, the whole Wuji Gate was shocked, as if it was a bolt from the blue. Then, numerous disciples of the Wuji Gate rushed toward the fallen immortal peak. When they saw Lu Cheng and the others really repairing the stone steps on the mountainside of the fallen immortal peak, when they saw the blue-clothed young man and the others tidying up the hall on the peak, and when they saw Lin Tian standing with a sword, everyone was dumbfounded as if they had seen a ghost, and they were almost petrified on the spot. He actually detained a group of senior brothers from Muyang Peak. Lu Cheng and the others are experts of the 6th heaven of the Sea of Consciousness, but they were detained by that person. That person seems to be called Lin Tian. Is he so strong? Lu Cheng and the others are actually not his match? My God, what is going on? My eyes are playing tricks on me. They must be playing tricks on me. Many people were extremely shocked. Gradually, more and more people came to the foot of the fallen immortal peak, and they were all dumbfounded. A person who occupied the abandoned fallen immortal peak actually detained the disciples of Muyang Feng, who was at the peak of his glory, to do manual labor. This scene was simply too shocking, and it could be said to be the most shocking thing in the history of the Wuji Gate. In the crowd, a girl in purple appeared. Staring at the scene in front of her, she could not help but open her mouth. The girl was naturally Bai Qiu. After glancing at the ashen-faced Lu Cheng and the others, she climbed to the top of the fallen immortal peak and pulled Lin Tian over. "You are such a bad guy." Although she said so, Bai Qiu held back her laughter, obviously finding it very interesting. "Of course not." Lin Tian shook his head and briefly explained what had happened. Bai Qiu glared at him and said angrily, "This is too much. Don't let them go. Let them trim the flowers and trees on the peak." Lin Tian. This girl was really a little devil. Although the fallen immortal peak was abandoned, it was still very big, and it would take at least 3 to 5 months to trim the flowers and trees on the peak. After a pause, he pulled Bai Qiu aside. "Hey, what are you doing?" Bai Qiu said. Lin Tian glanced around and asked, "Are you from the Bai family?" Bai Qiu curled her lips. "Nonsense, my surname is Bai. If I'm not from the Bai family, would I be from the He family?" Lin Tian was speechless, and he could not help but knock Bai Qiu's forehead. He was asking about the ancient Bai family. "How dare you knock me?" Bai Qiu gritted her teeth and grabbed Lin Tian's ear. "Let go." "No way." Lin Tian. After a lot of effort, Lin Tian pulled Bai Qiu away and said, "Be serious. Are you from the ancient Bai family?" "You know?" Bai Qiu curled her lips. Lin Tian was speechless. "Yes, I am." He was a little surprised and touched by Bai Qiu's straightforwardness. The ancient Bai family was one of the top forces in the second heaven, and she did not hide her identity as an ancient Bai family member from him at all. After a pause, he asked again, "By the way, I read in the ancient records that the Bai family is one of the top 10 sections. In comparison, how much stronger is the Bai family compared to the Wuji Gate?" Bai Qiu stared at Lin Tian. "You want to know?" "Of course." Lin Tian nodded. Bai Qiu's eyes narrowed into the shape of a crescent moon. He smiled and said, "To put it simply, if my lord is willing, a great sect like the Limitless Immortal School can be wiped out with a flick of his finger." As he spoke, Bai Qiu slashed with his palm towards Lin Tian's neck. Destroy it with a snap of his fingers? Lin Tian was shocked and could not help but gasp. The Wuji Gate had been around for a long time, but in front of the ancient families, it was just a lamb? If that was the case, how terrifying were the ancient families? Could it be that they had masters in the virtue and enlightenment realms? At the same time, he stared at Bai Qiu and was a little surprised. From the way Bai Qiu said, "my master," Bai Qiu seemed to have a special status in the Bai family. Otherwise, she would not have said "my master" so casually. The ancient families and the holy land of inheritance are very powerful. You must not provoke people from these forces in the future. Bai Qiu was a little serious, which was rare. Then, she looked a little annoyed and said, "The old fox of the Wuji Peak knows, but he is not willing to teach me the famous theurgies of the Wuji Peak. It would be strange if he was willing to teach you." Lin Tian couldn't help but roll his eyes and say, "Speaking of which, you're only in the Sea of Consciousness realm. So, what if you've obtained the theurgy? Without the cultivation of the immortal connecting realm, you still can't use it." Bai Qiu stared at Lin Tian in surprise. "Are you an idiot?" Lin Tian was speechless. "Can you talk nicely?" he said with a dark face. Bai Qiu pursed her lips and said, "Who told you that you can only cultivate theurgies when you reach the immortal ascension realm? Isn't that so? Don't theurgies need God power to be used? God power can only be obtained when you reach the immortal ascension realm." Lin Tian frowned. "So stupid." Lin Tian was speechless. Bai Qiu stretched out her slender finger and waved it in front of Lin Tian's eyes. "Let me give you a simple example of using an axe to chop down a tree. Let's treat Jin Yuan as a blunt axe and Xin Qi as a sharp axe. Similarly, if a person uses two different axes, do you dare say that a blunt axe cannot chop down a tree?" Lin Tian was shocked. It can be chopped down. It just takes a little longer to chop down a tree than to use a sharp axe." Lin Tian calmed down and said in a low voice, "You mean that true essence can also be used to use divine abilities, but the power of divine abilities will be weaker than those that rely on divine power. You are worth teaching. That's it." Chapter 303. Lin Tian calmed down and suddenly felt that Bai Qiu's words made sense. The levels of martial arts techniques and magic powers were generally named according to the same realm. To put it simply, airborne realm martial arts techniques referred to cultivators at or above the airborne realm who could fully exert their power. Ordinary magic powers referred to cultivators at or above the celestial reaching realm who could fully exert their power. It did not mean that cultivators below the celestial reaching realm couldn't cultivate and use martial arts techniques. Just like how some cultivators at the Sea of Consciousness could also cultivate and use airborne realm martial arts techniques. Compared to martial techniques, there's still a difference between true essence and divine force in cultivating supernatural powers, but the difference isn't that big. Bai Qiu said. Lin Tian nodded. "So that's how it was." After a pause, he suddenly smiled and looked at Bai Qiu. "Your Bai family is one of the top forces in this realm, so you should have many powerful supernatural powers, right? Since we're so fated, why don't you teach me one or two of your core secret arts? You want to learn?" "Of course." Bai Qiu giggled. In the past, there was a sect that was not much weaker than the Limitless Immortal School that learned one of my family's secret techniques. Later on, this sect disappeared without a trace overnight, and everyone was wiped out. Do you still want to learn it? I only learned one of your secret arts, and your Bai family actually killed them all. That's too much, isn't it? Lin Tian was a little speechless. Bai Qiu rolled his eyes. What do you know? The ancient scriptures of ancient families and sacred lands are the foundation of their foothold. It's said that the sect learned one of the core secret arts of our Bai family's divine scripture. If this were to spread, it would be a great blow to our Bai family. Our ancestors wouldn't tolerate such a thing. Lin Tian thought for a moment and said, "It's fine. I'm all alone in this world, and I'm not afraid of anything. Teach me." Bah! Don't even think about it. I'm telling you, don't even think about it. Not to mention a little cultivator like you. Even if the sacred masters of Taishian Sacred Ground and Wantong Sacred Ground learned my family's secret technique, the old ancestors would also forcefully take it back. Bai Qiu glanced sideways at Lin Tianyi and said, "Moreover, a normal family member will not be able to come into contact with the divine scripture before reaching the Sea of Knowledge realm. Once they reach the Sea of Knowledge realm, even if they learn the divine scripture, they won't dare to teach it to outsiders. The moment they have any thoughts of leaking the secret, the divine shattering rune that the elders have planted in their Sea of Knowledge will destroy their Sea of Knowledge." If someone tries to forcefully peek into their Sea of Knowledge, they will also detonate the divine shattering rune, resulting in the destruction of both body and soul. Lin Tianyi was shocked. Isn't this too exaggerated? Why are you so cruel to your own people? It can't be helped. This is a method to protect the family's inheritance. Bai Qiu said, "Of course, the divine shattering runes don't exist for some important direct descendants of the family. These direct descendants can teach others the essence of the ancient scripture without worrying about their Sea of Knowledge self-destructing. Back then, the sect that was destroyed in one night kidnapped a direct descendant princess of our Bai family. That was how we obtained a core secret technique from her. Otherwise, how could we have learned it?" Lin Tian rubbed his chin and said, "You don't have any divine shattering runes in your Sea of Knowledge, do you?" Bai Qiu was stunned, then curled his lips and glanced sideways at Lin Tian. "It seems like you don't have any." Lin Tian Dao snorted. Bai Qiu snorted. "I can teach you, but I definitely won't. If I teach you, it will only harm you. Please, I'm not afraid of you harming me. I'll bite you to death." Bai Qiu gritted his teeth and pounced. Lin Tian was speechless. Bai Qiu was a member of an ancient family, and his status was not low. How could he not care about the consequences? After some effort, he pushed Bai Qiu away and asked, "Speaking of which, since your family is so powerful, why did you come to Wuji Gate? Is it really just to find the divine divination technique?" "I'm tired of staying at home, so I came out for a walk. It's none of your business." Bai Qiu curled his lips and said seriously, "And to be honest, the divine divination technique is really terrifying. As a supreme secret technique created by the ancient celestial venerables, it's many times more powerful than the most powerful technique in our Bai family's divine scripture. It's a treasure." Lin Tian's heart skipped a beat. "You said that the divine scripture is the foundation of your Bai family, right?" "Yes." Bai Qiu nodded. Lin Tian said, "In that case, if someone were to obtain a supreme, heavenly venerates secret technique, wouldn't they be able to create a peak faction that is even more powerful than your Bai clan after spending some time?" Hearing this, Bai Qiu suddenly burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at?" Lin Tian asked suspiciously. Bai Qiu stopped laughing and rolled his eyes. "What do you think the supreme, secret technique created by the ancient celestial venerables is? Do you think anyone can learn it? That kind of secret technique is shockingly difficult. Normal people can't learn it at all. Those who can learn it are all geniuses and monsters." After a pause, Bai Qiu said, "Also, do you think it's that easy to create a large force? It takes countless years of accumulation. It's not something that can be done in a day." Lin Tianyi was stunned. He suddenly remembered that one of the 4 Fey gods in the first level of the Celestial Venerables said that normal people couldn't learn the ancient Celestial Venerables' secret technique, and that it would be useless to give it to normal people. He stared at Bai Qiu and said, "So, Even if you obtain the divine divination technique, you might not be able to learn it. Aren't you afraid that it will be a waste of effort? What do you mean by a waste of effort? You're asking for a beating. Bai Qiu snorted. I'm extremely talented. There's no divine technique that I can't learn. Lin Tian, you should teach me a few powerful secret techniques of your Bai family, he said. Don't even think about it. Lin Tian. The two of them talked as if there was no one else around, but the Muyang Feng disciples who were tidying up the wooden tables on the fallen celestial peak were furious. Their faces were frighteningly pale. At the same time, many people at the foot of the fallen celestial peak were dumbfounded, especially when they saw Bai Qiu's imposing aura and Ruoxin daughter staring at Lin Tian. Their expressions were even more shocked. This piece of trash, who was rumored to not have the courage to take the 49th main peaks test, was actually so intimate with such a fairy-like girl. At this moment, someone descended from the sky on a treasured sword. It was a white-robed man who looked to be 26 years old. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, and he was very handsome. Senior brother Sun Wei. The blue-robed young man was pleasantly surprised. On the fallen celestial peak, the other Muyang Feng disciples were also extremely excited. They all stopped what they were doing. Not only Muyang Feng and the others, but even the other disciples at the foot of the fallen celestial peak were slightly shocked. Sun Wei was an outstanding figure of Muyang Feng. He was now at the 8th level of the spiritual sea. Among the same generation as Muyang Feng, there were not many who were his match. Now that such a powerhouse appeared on the fallen celestial peak, it naturally caused many people to be shocked. The blue-robed young man shouted, Senior brother Sun, this person insulted me, Muyang Feng. Senior brother Sun, you have to stand up for us. As he spoke, the blue-robed young man looked at Lin Tian with a face full of hatred. Beside him, the others also stared fiercely at Lin Tian, as if they wanted to eat Lin Tian alive. Clang! A sword whistled, and a sword wind swept out, directly sending the blue-robed young man and the others flying. They were all in a sorry state. Did I tell you to stop? Lin Tian glanced at them from the corner of his eyes. The blue-robed young man and the others were shocked and angry. They were so angry that they were trembling. This, Sun Wei is here, but this guy still dares to do this. He actually slapped Muyang Feng's people in front of Sun Wei. He is really audacious. But this guy is so strong. So what? Sun Wei is different from Lu Cheng and the others. Their levels are much lower. That's true. Many people whispered. Sun Wei looked indifferent as he stared at Lin Tiandao. Young people are frivolous. This is not good. Why don't you restrain yourself? If I hit Muyang Feng, break Muyang Feng's stone steps, destroy your Muyang Feng's tables and chairs, and fill Muyang Feng's Yuting pavilion with gravel and withered grass, then ask you to restrain yourself, what do you think? Lin Tian asked back. Did Lu Cheng and the others do such a thing on the fallen celestial peak? In the past, it was said that if someone occupied the fallen celestial peak, Muyang Feng's people would come to make trouble and humiliate the person who occupied the fallen celestial peak. But they have never gone so far. So what? It's not a big deal. This is now. If it was in the glorious days of the fallen celestial peak, who would dare to do this? But this guy named Lin Tian is really arrogant. He actually detained all these people on the fallen celestial peak. Many people murmured to each other. They finally knew the reason behind this. Sun Wei was dressed in white. There wasn't a single speck of dust on him. He looked extremely calm as he walked towards Lin Tian. No matter what, as a disciple of the everlasting immortal sect, you are going too far. Humiliating my junior brother of the Mu Yang Peak. I have to do something. If not, I will let down my junior brothers and sisters and break your legs. You are really confident, Lin Tian said with a smile. It's not difficult to deal with you, Sun Wei said. Bai Qiu said to Lin Tiandao through voice transmission, be careful. This Sun Wei is really not simple. The aura he contains is very powerful. At this moment, Sun Wei had already raised his hand and sent a slap towards Lin Tian's face. I'll break your legs later. As your senior brother, This slap can be considered a small lesson for you. Remember, you have to keep a low profile. Don't be too arrogant. Sun Wei's slap caused the air to vibrate. It was extremely shocking. Sun Wei has practiced Muyang Feng's extreme yang body tempering technique. His physique is very strong. Few people in the same generation can compete with him. I have indeed heard that in terms of physique, Sun Wei has few rivals in the sea of consciousness. This Lin Tian is going to be in big trouble. Will his cheeks be smashed? It's hard to say. Many people whispered. Even Bai Qiu was moved. He saw the terrifying power of Sun Wei's slap and reminded Lin Tian not to take it head-on. Lin Tian's face was calm. He directly punched out. I really don't know where your sense of superiority comes from. The fist and the palm collided. Suddenly, the sound of bones breaking was heard. How dare a firefly compete with the bright moon? How dare he fight against senior brother Sun's physical body? He's courting death. Serves him right. The young man in blue and the others laughed, feeling very relieved. At the foot of the fallen immortal peak, many people shook their heads and said, in the sea of consciousness, there are indeed few people who can compete with Sun Wei's physical body. That's right. It's too reckless and childish to fight with his fist directly. Many people were discussing. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.